Recording in progress.
I spoke loud enough so you could hear me. And we'll go into, where am I here now? We'll go into public safety, and the first one up will be the district attorney.
All right. Good afternoon. Eric Spar, District Attorney. I was worried I was not going to get in here on time. I went to park in my normal spot. There was this white vehicle there, and I couldn't park there. I think it's getting towed, though, so it's fine. It said like Zay Ronnie on the license plate or something like that. So our budget starts on page 198. I don't think it's as exciting as some of them. Mostly it's pretty much the same as it has been prior years. The changes that I'll try to outline, I guess first, for people I haven't talked about this too much, yes. And we're gonna have it towed instead. It'll be all right. But we have a kind of a state-county hybrid with our employees. So the lawyers are state employees. Everybody else is county. We have some computer resources provided by the state. The remainder of our resources come from the county. So it throws off things a little bit at budget time, but for the most part, our changes are things that were out of our control, such as mostly the salaries and benefits changes, the Office 365, those sorts of things. One thing that is different from before would be line 53006. That has to do with transitioning to off-site electronic storage. So basically, cloud-based storage for our discovery, that there's been an increase over time in that for all of law enforcement. So that has to do with cell phone downloads that have become increasingly common, also body camera and squad video. So we're dealing with a lot more of that than we used to. Sharing it is not very efficient when we're dealing with USB thumb drives. Also, the storage of those devices becomes problematic, and they don't last forever. So basically, we're transitioning to the same program. It's called Box.com. That is used by the Attorney General, the FBI, the Department of Justice, other prosecutors' offices. So that's the one big change. There's $15,000 there, which is a pretty significant increase from what was happening before. There is an ongoing cost that would be associated with Box.com, although it's less than that $15,000. Our understanding is it would be less than $10,000 a year going forward. But it is something that would require money each year to continue funding. So that's something we really, it's inevitable. We're going to have to deal with it at some point, but I think now is the time. So that's the only, I think, real exciting thing in the budget that's different than other years. The other thing that is a little bit tricky with our budget is there are 2 grants that are still active, so we have a pretty significant amount of money that's coming in and out due to those grants, but it balances out, so it doesn't really impact the bottom line. Both of those grants right now are due to expire in September of '24. We anticipate one of them may be extended because I think there's still going to be some money left, but that'll make the budget look a little more simple when those are gone. So I guess with that by way of explanation of changes, I guess I'll leave it to all of you if there are questions.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How long are you required to save evidentiary stuff? I've heard that the attorney's offices in Salem, Massachusetts still have Lizzie Borden files. I don't know, what's the length of time you are required to save stuff?
Yeah, it depends on the type of case. So some of them we save forever. Some of them are significantly less. So a misdemeanor case, for example, is a lot less. But the problem now is just that there's so much more material than there used to be. So if there are 10 officers, for example, that respond to a situation, there's body camera footage from all of them, and just the size of those files is massive compared to anything we used to be dealing with. So this just wasn't really a problem before. Most of our material 10 or 15 years ago was paper documents. Maybe some photos, but even those were printed. And now that's just not the case. Now there's body camera footage, there's squad video, there are all these things on essentially every case. And some of them, if it's only one officer, it's not that large. But for incidents where there are many officers responding, it's massive.
Supervisor Challenger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the data storage side, is this like the need now, and we're going to continue to grow the need for data storage as we move more into, cases that need to be stored for a while?
The need is still growing, although this would cover us for the future, it looks like. So this essentially, and actually Kelly is the expert from my office on that. So that was, do you recall if there was any sort of a limit on that? My impression was there was not. Right. So yeah, I think that they allowed whatever there's not a capacity limit for that. So I don't think, if the question was getting at, are we going to have to get increased storage as a result of more material? It did not sound like it. And when we were talking about the cost, some of this, the 15,000 includes kind of that transition period and the increased support that there would be during that period, which it wouldn't be the same cost going forward. So what we were told, we don't have an exact number on this, but we should anticipate less than 10,000 a year going forward.
Okay, great. One more question on your contractual services. Could you tell us a little bit about what goes into professional services 55014? And I just asked that because it's your department through different district attorneys for a long time has been relatively consistent in most lines, but there's a couple year trend now where professional services is a much higher number than before. So just curious, kind of what services go into that line.
Yes, so this is one of those that's associated with one of the grants. So specifically, these are contracts associated with diversion programs, and the bulk of that increase, or the bulk of that change, I guess it's really there was at some point a little bit of a decrease here, but the big changes in that come from grant-funded programming that we still have the grant for that's the one that we're hoping will be extended. So for one more year, maybe two. At that point, that's where that will get interesting. If we wouldn't be able to continue the program if we didn't have funding, and a lot of that goes to urinalysis tests that are associated with that program. There's also there's a recovery coach that's funded by that grant as well. So that's basically what makes up that line.
Okay. Do you have any legal professional services that are contracted out?
No. If we have to pursue, so the only thing that we would have to get lawyers for would be if we have a conflict with a case, we would try to find another DA's office to handle it. As long as we're able to do that, they would not be paid. So we take cases from other counties. Actually, just this week, we took 3 cases from another county. We gave them one of ours, maybe not the best exchange rate there, but DA's offices will handle those cases for each other, and then there's no money exchanged. And I'm just trying to think if there would be anything else. I don't think that there is, and I'm going to look at Kelly now, and she's going to shake her head no. So, okay, then I trust it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Ernst.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My question's a little abstract, but yesterday we heard a presentation about priority-based budgeting and focusing on programs as a way to meet specific priorities. So looking at your office's budget narrative, I see some of your priorities include things like safeguarding rights and protecting community through vigorous prosecution of criminal offenders. I was hoping that maybe you could take some of these line items and contextualize them a little bit in terms of those priorities for your office. I understand that you're not asking for an increase except once to meet sort of unavoidable technology problems. So I was hoping maybe you could tell us what your office does or has been doing to meet those priorities with the budget you have.
Yeah, so I guess one of the big ones, and this is where it gets a little difficult. For example, the prosecution, I guess we call it a program within priority-based budgeting. That is mostly the stuff that's state funded. So that's a huge chunk of what we do, doing cases. We get police reports from law enforcement, we make a charging decision, we appear in court, we have a trial if it gets to that point. all the things that are associated with sending a case through the criminal court system in the more traditional manner we would put under prosecution, that's really all state funded. So even though that's one of the biggest things we do, there's essentially almost a negligible budget impact from a county perspective. But then for some of them, it's much more county focused. So I guess for example, data analysis is something where we do have a crime data analyst, that's a county employee. So that's something, and data analysis gets into a couple different areas. One is evaluating programs that are out there or the way that things are working in the criminal justice system right now. Part of that is looking for trends. So for example, if we look at how we're doing things internally, we might find inconsistencies, which we actually did find when we most recently went through one of these, found that there were inconsistencies with how certain cases were being handled, and we were able to then address that. So that's one of the other programs, data analysis, which deals with a few different things. Some of these, I guess, just picking another one from the list, process service, that's something that we used to contract out. So if we have subpoenas that need to be served when there's a trial scheduled, we would contract that out and we would pay people their time to serve those subpoenas. We brought that in-house. That's something that our investigators do. That's not the only thing they do, but it's one of the things that they do that we don't pay money for anymore. So essentially that's our investigators do some follow-up investigation. They monitor jail phone calls. They do subpoena service. They do a number of different things. But the cost per service of subpoena isn't really impacted because they're just covering all of them. So I guess I'm not sure how far you want me to go with that, but those are a few examples.
Okay, I thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
We let you off easy today.
I
Clerk of
appreciate it.
Courts.
Good afternoon. All right, so I am Tara Berry, Clerk of Courts here. And of course, we have the courts as part of this budget, but we also have the probate office and also family court services, which offers mediation services to litigants, specifically parents, for custody and placement. Just for a couple of the things that we're requesting this year, so if I don't know you, I was appointed in 2021, and when I came into my office, we were short-staffed, like most offices. So one of the things that we're requesting is our admin 2 positions raised to an admin 3. Specifically, that is our hardest position to keep filled. It's our frontline position. It's the ones that work personally with the customers at the front line, taking payments, helping them file their paperwork, trying to answer questions without giving legal advice. It's a fine line that we walk, but we do the best that we can. I am, I think, maybe 2 weeks away from finally having a full front line and a full staff. I have yet to have a full staff, so I'm very excited about that. We have specifically just been focusing on training. When I started, I have about a 27 staff office throughout the Clerk of Courts. I think 6 of my staff are when I first originally started as the Clerk of Courts, and maybe that's about it. Everybody else is new. And we're constantly training, we're constantly cross-training to get people to learn multiple jobs. So this year, last year I had eliminated 1 position, which was my admin 5. This year we've decided to eliminate a position and a half, an associate 1, and then a part-time admin 2 to 3, which was also a frontline position. It was pretty hard to fill, but we have made some changes in the office and restructuring that we think will support the needs of the office and the court system as well, and it seems to be working well. We have a couple projects with the courts that we're also requesting. One was we would like to put in some video conferencing equipment with one of the court commissioners' offices. Right now they used just the normal telephone conferencing system, but we think it would be helpful for the family court office to have that video conferencing access as well. We have a lot of requests for video appearances. They just don't have that kind of technology. All the circuit courts after this year will have brand new technology. We're putting in our last branch this year, and that's in branch 6. Hopefully, if we get all the technology and everything goes well, we're still waiting on a few parts, but I think we're almost done with that project. The other project was speakers in branch 5. We just need to do some updating in there. Some of those larger courtrooms, if you've seen them with the higher ceilings, we have issues with hearing, with the litigants and things like that. So we're hoping to get that fixed on the technology side of things. Other than that, our budget is pretty much the same. We work off of state equipment, so not county equipment. So everything that we use is supplied by WI Courts and .gov, and that's why we all have different email addresses. But CCAP supplies it, and they come fix and do all that kind of stuff. The only technology that the county specifically pays for and maintains is really the video conferencing equipment. Other than that, there wasn't too much of a change unless anybody has any questions.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What kind of covert cases do you handle? What is that all about?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What sort of covert cases do you handle?
Oh, I think it was supposed to say convert cases. I saw it was a typo. I noticed that when I was
Oh.
sitting in the back. I apologize.
Okay.
Nothing too secretive. It's all public record, so unless it's protected by statute.
Supervisor Ernst.
Thank you. Good afternoon. On page 208, there's a recommended change from the county executive about assessing a fee to couples for no showing their courthouse wedding. I was just curious how, I guess, much of an issue is that?
Well, that's something that's definitely still in the works. So it's really, I was doing a little bit more research. One of the counties that I was speaking to was Washington County. They have, it's called a building use fee. And one of the things that they use it for is couples who get married in the courthouse. Courts do weddings during their intake period, which is 2 weeks. So every 6 weeks, they have a 2-week period. And we probably average about 3 to 4 weddings in an intake. But sometimes, depending on, like, let's just say we get a day where there's a crazy date. Like, I think on February 2nd of February 22 of 22, I think we did 20 weddings that day. So it would, from my understanding, it'd be like a $75 fee. It'd be considered a building use fee. And then talking to Washington County, actually they collect it in the county clerk's office, Julie, but we haven't gotten there yet. So we would still definitely need to do some sort of fee schedule. It's just something that we've been kicking around to see if we could try to build some revenue, because most of the stuff we deal with are court fees and fines, and we do collection and things like that, but it's really hard for us to find other avenues for revenue.
So are actual wedding no-shows like a real problem?
It happens, so they apply for the license through Julie's office. Julie's office does reach out to us about who's on intake if if they're unsure. Couples reach out to us, we schedule, we go through the whole spiel, we type up vows, and then sometimes people just don't show up. And we try to reach out, people change their mind, it's fine, or maybe they forgot and they wanted a different date. I mean, there's like anything else. It's just one of those things where it can be a little bit of an inconvenience, but, we do put time and effort into getting people what they want.
Okay, sure. Yes, thank you. That clarifies that there's some time put in by staff for
Yes.
these ceremonies, because I think we can all agree that, pricing people out of weddings kind of makes weddings inaccessible for some people, which is a concern from a civil standpoint, I feel. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's all there is.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Next will be the sheriff with jail improvement fund.
Good afternoon. So I will start off with the 2 positions that we requested that were removed by the county exec. I'm going to explain them. I want to talk about the return on investment in both of those positions. First being the Special Victims Unit detective position. Its main focus is going to be on fraud investigations. We had over $6 million in fraud in Winnebago County in the last 3 years. That's from Winnebago County residents. Their focus is going to be on fraud and human trafficking. We have created a relationship with Damascus Road, and that will be the point of contact with Damascus Road. So they will meet with, oftentimes victims of trafficking end up in our jail, and this detective would be responsible for meeting with them. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 occasions to meet with victims of human trafficking to get them to talk about who is trafficking them, what they're using to convince them, coerce them, force them into trafficking, and we're going to hold those people accountable. They will also be responsible for child sex abuse, internet crimes against children, sextortion, which I talked about before. That is really big in our younger generation, the teenage, even preteen. where a person, young person, will send a picture of themselves, either fully nude or whatever it might be. They think they're sending it to somebody they met on the internet who is of the same age. It's not. It's someone that is going to extort them for money. There have been suicides that have occurred with young people who don't know that there's a resource for them. And we have investigated those instances. As soon as we start to, and I'll put this in plain terms, as soon as we bully the bully, it stops, typically. So they don't, this particular person does not want law enforcement to deal with them. So we have seen some very good results in that area. The other position is the MEG unit position, Metropolitan Enforcement Group. It's part of LWAM, Lake Winnebago Area MEG unit. There are 15 agencies that participate in LWAM, and they are from 4 different counties: Calumet, Outagamie, Winnebago, and Fond du Lac. We have not filled that position for about 2 years. Reason being is staffing. We are now, I'll talk a little bit about staffing as soon as I go through this, but things are getting better. I still don't have the staff to fill that position. Previously, to about in 2012 or 13, up until then, we had a detective in that position. Then that person was removed out of that position, and we pulled a patrolman to fill that position. I can't do that any longer. Not just due to staffing levels, but also the amount of calls for service that we have. Even though we have, and I won't say given up, because 41, those areas of 41 that the jurisdiction went back to, Neenah, Fox Crossings, a small portion of Menasha, and Oshkosh, that never should have been ours to begin with. When you annex the other side of the highway, you take with it the highway. And that didn't happen. Although that changed a little bit of our workload, we still keep a car dedicated to US Highway 41. There is a squad that is still responsible for I-41 and for 441. What we did was we took that area that was up on the north end, moved it to the west so that we can provide services to the town of Winchester, town of Wolf River, and those rural areas. The chairman pointed out in last year's budget session, we would like to see more presence in our rural areas. We listened to that. So we made some changes so that we could do that. That doesn't decrease our calls for service. We are able to be more proactive in those areas, but it doesn't decrease the calls for service. We're still on 41. For those of you that traveled it this morning, you saw our guys out there. The MEG position, as I said, there are 15 agencies. 5 of them are vacant right now. They're having the same issues we are. We need to get that position filled. Back in 2022, there was enough fentanyl seized in Fond du Lac to kill the city twice. So it's here. We have, to date, 41 overdoses, 6 pending. And I don't want to steal the thunder of the medical examiner, but those will more than likely come back as drug overdoses as well. That's 47. That is a new high, and we're not even through November and December. So we need to be very proactive on a lot of different fronts, and one of them is being proactive in the investigation portion. When we put in for these 2 positions, they were due to finance in June. And it's, I don't know if you get the actual position request or not, but it's fairly detailed on why we need the position and what the position costs, and there's fairly detailed information. We had our meeting with the county exec in August. The only thing said at that meeting was tough decisions would need to be made. That was it. There was no mention of the 2 positions being eliminated. We met with judiciary in September. At that point, they hadn't been removed from the budget, so we assumed that everything was okay. I was notified that they were taken out of the budget the same time that judiciary was when they were given the information from finance, they had information from the executive's office and from finance. I didn't know they weren't going to be in there. So, not speaking with the county exec or having a discussion with him, I would have thought that would have happened at one of those points where we met with him. So, yeah, there is a communication issue there. It's not that I'm too proud to do that, but at that point, from my perspective, his mind was made up. And now we needed to go a different route to get the positions back into the budget because it had already been published. I do want to talk quickly. So that's what you're going to get with those two positions. We are going to be very proactive in human trafficking. We're going to be very proactive in fraud investigations. We're going to be very proactive when it comes to drug investigations that deal with Winnebago County and outside. When you look, it's 40% of the drugs seized came from Winnebago County, even though we don't have somebody in the unit. Of those 4 counties, 40% of 2024's drugs, or 2023's drugs, came from this county. So we need to be part of it.
Sheriff, I believe we had some questions just on that. Some lights lit up right away when
Yeah,
we started
okay.
talking about it. Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, thank you for your time today. A couple questions for me. The first one is about, and you covered this and I appreciate it, about the 441 patrol switch. Can you explain kind of how long this has been in the works and what this will do precisely for response times in the areas that we serve as opposed to areas that have their own PDs?
Sure. So I met with the police chiefs. It was a process of about 8 months where I spoke to them about it. I spoke to them about giving those areas of responsibility back to them or giving them to them because they never really took them. And their response time is different. We may have a car in the town of Wolf River investigating something that would have to come to 441 or to I-41. So those PDs are much more centrally located and have a much more intense group of officers working a specific area. We have 5 deputies typically working the entire county on a shift. That's our normal staffing. So this morning, although I didn't look at the board, I'm going to assume it was 5, even though we had numerous crashes going on, and we just prioritize and try to get them done as quickly and efficiently as we can.
And then the next question I have is about the Meg Unit Detective position. Can you go into what area outside of, we have the 4 counties, but most of the work is going to be done in this county, correct? And so, in my view, half of the battle is interdiction. We do a lot of treatment, that's fantastic, but we still need to do our best to stem the tide of what's flowing in. So in your mind, how much time would these new positions be spending in Winnebago County proper?
That casework will go from different areas throughout the 4 counties. So it's hard to say exactly how much this position would be in Winnebago County, although our focus is going to be mainly right here. And especially with 40% of the drugs seized this year already being here, obviously this is where the effort needs to occur. So significant amount. We currently, when we have a drug case that gets too large for our current agency, we try to turn it over to the Lake Winnebago area Meg Unit. But obviously resources are tight there. So we need to do our part to make sure that the large cases and getting to the dealers that are coming from the large metropolitan areas are held accountable. And you're right, it's a multi-pronged approach. You have the enforcement piece and you have the recovery piece and the harm reduction piece. So it's multi-pronged. We want to be part of all of it. We started the STAR program in the jail, and I could talk about that a little bit. We plan on giving a full presentation to the board within the next few months if the chair will allow.
Thank you. And then the last thing I have is, could you go into the reimbursement we get from the FBI in regards to the ICAC? I know that we do get reimbursed for that. Some people have concerns that we're doing a lot of work that the federal government may be doing, but we do get reimbursed for that. Is that correct?
Yes. So when a lead comes in through NCMEC, it's the National Institute for Missing Children. When that lead comes in, that someone is downloading large portions of child porn, producing it, actually engaging in sexual assault live, and that happens, that comes to us and we begin to work that case. We don't know where that is stemming from. We start to work with the IP address of where it came from, and we start to engage with that person. So it's hard to say we're not going to take that case because we don't think it's Winnebago County. We have no idea. But yes, we do get reimbursed for our overtime for cases that are worked outside of Winnebago County. So there is some reimbursement, but again, the child that lives in, I mean, we've had them in Florida, we've had them in California, we've had them in Fond du Lac County, we've had them in Outagamie County. We can turn stuff over, but you have to understand that once that detective begins corresponding with that person, they'll know when something's different. So you've already created a rapport with that person. It's not impossible, but it's hard to pass it off to someone else. And we have been unbelievably successful. Received national awards for what is being done.
And in your view, both of these positions are mission critical for public safety in this community.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, first off, for addressing those two detective positions. I just want to voice again, as I did in judiciary and last night, the who, what, where, why, and how isn't really mattering right now, except that I'm disappointed those two positions didn't happen. I've had a great conversation with the coroner. Just so this county is aware, there are students in this county that go to a party, they think they're taking a recreational drug. And if you can imagine someone with no opioid tolerance at all, 1 grain of salt on your hand, maybe 2. That's what it took to recently kill someone in this county that he wasn't aware about. I would really like on these two positions a clear message that I understand the budget concerns. I really do. I really would like not in Winnebago County message to be sent. You're not trafficking those kids through Winnebago County. You're not trafficking fentanyl through Winnebago County. And these two positions will help with that. Thank you.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One comment and then one question, Sheriff. Comment, having been threatened by a wanted man on the Meg, I would like to see that position filled until I know that guy is gone and I want to be safe. My question is, and this is something, you and I wrangle about this every budget hearing, the telephone charges, your revenue from telephone keeps going up. I'm concerned about what we're charging prisoners to make phone calls. I know they can call their attorneys for free. Can they call a medical professional? Can they call their clergyman? Who else can they call for free? Anybody else?
They are, so it's now, like the visitation is done through tablets. We haven't changed anything on the amount charged per minute. We actually reduced it, I believe last budget, to what the state average is for jails. We reduced it. What you're seeing, why the revenue is increasing, is the inmates they're having more visits on the tablets. They're making more telephone calls. It's not that the cost per minute went up, which I think is 16 cents, I think. It's that they're calling more often. Yes, there are phone numbers that we can put into the system that are free. We do that with the STAR program. If they want to call their recovery coach, that's free. So there are phone numbers that we put in there.
Physicians?
I'm sorry?
Physicians?
I don't know about physicians.
Clergy?
I would have to check. I don't want to misspeak.
Okay. I'm concerned about the cost.
12 cents a minute. My backup
It's
singers just told me
not
12.
16? Okay. All right, thank you.
Supervisor Zelmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, John, the two positions you want, MEG unit and the fraud, human trafficking, neither one is in the 2024 budget, correct?
It is not.
And can you estimate what the cost would be for 1 year for wages and fringe benefits for those two positions?
150 apiece, 130 to 150. The exact numbers, the exact numbers you're going to know, I believe, fairly soon.
I think both of these are so very, very needed. And I hope there's some way we can get them in the budget for you.
Okay,
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Supervisor Stirrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff. At a recent WCA conference, they spoke about how cannabis legalization is coming our way. There's nothing we can do about that. Any thoughts on that and how that impacts your workload?
Say that again, please. I'm sorry.
At the WCA conference, the speakers told us that cannabis legalization was coming our way. There was nothing we can do, and I just wondered how that affects your department.
Yeah, I've talked about this before. There are a lot of issues that come with the legalization of cannabis. We have to be smart. If it's going to happen, let's be smart about it. Let's not allow large grow operations. Let's learn from the states of Colorado, Michigan. Let's do our research, and let's make sure that the legislation is driven by common sense. Does it change things? Sure. If you look at statistically the amount of crashes that involve the presence of THC in the state of Colorado, that went up. When you look at the other issues with the ancillary crime, some of those things went up. I'm not here to judge anybody that is for marijuana legalization. If it is truly coming, which I'm not exactly sure if it is, then let's be smart. Let's make sure that both sides are heard when it comes to the legislation.
Okay, and one more question, if I may. How does our national security with people just coming in, and how is that affecting your department? Do you see any effects on that?
Sure. We have to, or we have to report back to immigration on certain. They just grab the information from us. We don't really report anything. It's an automatic thing that they mine out from our daily activity. So, does it make a difference? I don't know. Here, maybe not so much. I mean, we do have some that are picked up by ICE in our facility, but it doesn't happen a lot.
I'll let you finish your report now, sir.
Oh, okay. The jail improvement fund, what you're going to see is we are purchasing a washer, a dryer, and a new body scanner that will be part of that will be paid. Body scanner will be paid out of the jail improvement fund. Our current scanner is 10 years old, maybe a little more. Technology has changed dramatically. The new software will actually pick up any indiscretion on the image. So not a lot of change there. We just use the jail improvement funds for uniforms and those types of things for the inmates. As far as the STAR program, the sobriety treatment addiction recovery program, if you haven't heard about it, we're excited about it. It's been in place since September of last year. We're seeing a 46% sobriety or a success rate on the outside because we're wrapping around services once they leave the jail. So we're using Vivitrol, which blocks the effects of opioids and alcohol, and then giving them wraparound services through Solutions Recovery on the outside. And we're seeing great success Really excited. It is all grant funded at this point. So we're going to continue to look for grants. It's gaining attention. Some of the staff went to Washington, D.C. and presented at the National Counties Conference, and they have presented at the recent opioid conference last week with a lot of interest.
Supervisor Gabbert.
One's a comment, one's a question. How much, and maybe you don't know this, but I think you probably do. Rough ballpark figure, what a Vivitrol shot costs these days?
It's about, it's about $1,250. However, when they're in our facility, we have switched to pills. You can take a daily pill.
Okay.
It's like $25 a month for the pill. But before they leave the facility, we give them a shot because it's good for 30 days. The pill's it has to be daily. So we want to make sure that we're using the sobriety that they had in our facility, the 30 days when they get out, to get them back on track, and our sobriety coaches.
So, I know a person that's getting those, and they get them once a month.
Mhm.
So, and they're not paying for them.
Yep.
So is that set up when they leave?
Yes.
And is it set up for a year, or how does that work? Who keeps track of if they're on track?
Right. The recovery coach maintains that constant contact with them to make sure, we make sure that their insurance, whether it's Badger Care, whether it's private insurance, whatever it is on track to pay for the Vivitrol shots. As far as I know, it's indefinite, as long as that person is going to get the shot. And that's what the recovery coach ensures.
So is that through Solutions?
I'm sorry?
Is that through, are you working hand in hand with Solutions?
Yes,
Okay.
and Human Services.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. So they get that all set up.
yep,
Then I'll talk about the detective positions.
yes.
So I've heard the story. I've put that in my mind, and earlier I told you what I thought about it. So I'm hoping that we do put those back, because from my perspective, being a county resident, I want people to be safe, and I'm not sure I think it's detrimental not to have those two positions back in the budget. That's my feeling, and I thought they did a good job. The MEG unit's been around for a lot of years. I want to see it going, instead of enabling people, we need to catch the bad guys and get this cut off. And I think that this board should realize how important those two positions are. And we do have the money we could take from somewhere, which we'll probably find out in a little while. So I'm in favor of those two positions being
Thank
put
you.
back in. That's all I have. Thanks.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask a little bit about your wage, the wage portion of your budget
Okay.
to start with. So, in 2022, it's not in our document here, but in the 2022 budget, we budgeted wage turnover savings that were not realized. In 2023, we budgeted $330,000 of wage turnover savings, and it doesn't look like we're going to realize those this year. Is that correct?
I'm not sure where we are exactly, but
So for this year's, I'm looking on page 227
yep,
at the 2023 projected numbers for wages, and the regular pay is projected to equal the budgeted, the adopted and revised amounts, and then a zero in the wage turnover savings portion.
okay.
So I thought over the last year, though, I've heard about open positions at the sheriff's office, right? You've had vacant positions all year long.
We do, but we have done a much better job. Let me give you, so we've used an internship program where we pay the interns. They agree to lock into a 3-year deal with us, so we hire them, we background them, we run them through this normal process of becoming a full-time employee. They become a paid intern. When they graduate, we do this their last semester of school. When they graduate, they become a full-time employee. Here, we have 5 openings right now in the jail division, and I have 6 eligible interns. So I actually am +1. However, I have 4 retirements in December. So when you do all the math, we should be at about 2, maybe 3 openings, which is out of 195, not bad. When you compare us to, other agencies, even other departments.
Right. Yeah, I think it sounds like the gap has been closed, but it sounds like throughout the year, there's still been a gap.
There has. I mean, we averaged, I want to say 16 positions open. Yes, our average.
So out of about 200 positions, it makes sense to me that about 8% of your budgeted wage amount wouldn't be realized. Am I
Yeah.
missing something?
No, you're not, but going into '24, we're not going to see that. Although because here's the problem with the wage turnover. It takes, if we hire a new patrol deputy, they haven't been to recruit school, 17 weeks in recruit school, 16 weeks on our FTO program. We're not going to see them for 6 to 8 months, but we're paying them, and we're paying the overtime to cover the position that we put them in that's not filled, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
So-
Okay.
Yeah,
So you hire me today.
Yep.
It's 33 weeks before I'm out on the streets or in the jail doing
Yep.
my job, but I've been paid.
Yes.
Okay, and so during those 33 weeks, do you consider that position filled or vacant?
We consider it filled, however, it's not working for us yet. It's not filling
Right.
vacant spots.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think it leads to what I was thinking, which is that I don't think your department needs wage turnover savings. It's been multiple years that we haven't realized those wage turnover savings, nor the fringe turnover savings. And what it's effectively doing is pushing your budget up by $660,000 last year, or this year, $500,000 of budgeted savings that I don't think we're going to realize, which means that truly the cost of running this department, in my mind, should be an additional $500,000 from the wage turnover savings and fringe turnover savings that I don't think we're going to realize. Does that make sense? Do you agree, or do you think we're gonna end up with $250,000 of unused wages?
I'll let Mr. Collard speak to that.
The wages for the sheriff's office right now are at 68.9% of budgeted. That's through the end of September 2023. So if we were running at budget, it would be 75%. So we're running about 6% less than the budgeted amount. I'm trying to do the math on the fly here. That's no, it's going to be enough so that the turnover savings will be realized, and then some. That's for 2023. So I'm not sure we've had a year since 2014 when they haven't covered their turnover savings with actual savings. In other words, when they've needed it. In 2022, we granted a $3 per wage increase, off the budget cycle. So that was mainly absorbed in that. That's why we didn't realize the turnover savings. We granted those large pay increases during the middle of the year. Every other year, we have been able to cover that turnover savings with unexpended funds in the department.
And presumably, we're going to add some.
Just projecting forward, and I'm kind of doing this on the fly, it looks like we will have that amount of savings for 2023. In other words, the sheriff won't spend all of his budget on labor, even after deducting the turnover savings.
So where do we get the projected number in our budget book that differs then from what you're telling us now? Is that just because we had a different snapshot in July or whenever this budget book was put together?
Well, if you look at the 2023 projected, it's exactly the same as the 2023 adopted and the 2023 revised, which means we leave that up to departments to do the projections.
Well, except the wage turnover savings. I mean, there's no projected wage turnover savings
Yeah, as I say, if you look at all the projected numbers, with exception of overtime, none of them were changed from the budgeted amounts. The overtime was changed, and the turnover savings wasn't projected essentially. So, as I said, those projections typically come from departments.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Still think this wage turnover savings is too high in this department and is going to continue to end up with more expenses than we've actually budgeted, especially with the advantageous position that your innovations have spurred. That's a good thing, though, to be clear. It's a very good thing that we have positions filled. All right, I want to go back to the FBI reimbursement
Yes.
piece. I guess I was wondering if you could point out which revenue line item this is where that program budget would be really helpful. Which of the revenue lines is associated with that FBI reimbursement?
42018, which is Wisconsin Department of Justice. It's part of that.
Okay, so is the money coming from the FBI?
It is.
Through
But
the
it funnels
Wisconsin-
through
yeah.
the state. yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then what else is that entire amount reimbursement for was it internet crimes or whatever I forget what the acronym was.
Internet crimes against children. No, it's not all of that. It is. You got the. Oh, yeah, the annual state reimbursement for the deputies was increased to $160 per deputy. That comes from the state too, so that's for training purposes. It was $125, they increased it to $160, and then the MAT grant is also in there, the medically aided treatment grant, is part of the STAR program.
Okay, so how much of this year's executive budget, how much of that $396,980 is from the internet crimes against children reimbursement?
I think it's about 40,000. I'm not sure, but we'll find it. 20,000.
20,000.
20,000 in overtime costs covered by the FBI.
Okay, so that's is that about a quarter of the position's cost?
Yes.
Okay,
A little less, yeah.
a little less, okay. Okay, now, I'm not trying to put you on the defensive here. Just-
No.
Your department has seen a levy increase for the last at least 10 years. I've not paid attention to the county board before 2013, so I didn't go back and look. But since 2013, your department has seen a levy increase every single year. You're also the only department, except for the county executive office, that has seen a levy increase every year for that time period. Can you talk about some of the like organic forces that cause your department to see higher levy requests year after year after year?
Sure. We did, as Mr. Collard stated, we did a $3 increase to our deputies back in 2021 for a large portion of them that was outside of contract. And then you also, part of the wage study that was done, that was significant to the non-deputy positions. So it really is in the wage piece. However, we've also seen an increase in other contractual. Just like food has gone up for all of us when we go to the grocery store, it's gone up to feed our inmates. So we've seen an increase for that vendor. We've seen an increase in our medical provider for the jail. These are all fairly substantial. Mike Elder talked about what vehicles increases are. We had budgeted a 10% increase for our squads. They came in at 17% higher. And trying to get them, we're hopeful. It's a good thing we carry guns, because I'm not sure that, there are a lot of agencies that are waiting for cars from 23. So it's just gotten more expensive. I mean, there's nothing in disguise. There's nothing that's magical about the budget. It is what we need to do in order to provide a high level of service to the people we serve. And that's people that are homeowners, and that's people that are in our jail facility. So it is that type of service that is expected.
And a lot of the employees in the sheriff's department have wage increases built into their contracts, right?
Yes.
So if we go back to 2013, 2014, there might have been a 0% or 1% or, increase in county wages, but your team was still seeing higher wage increases than that by virtue of their contracts, often.
Well, and the reason we did the $3 catch-up is because, the way the contract landed, if you land on a contract renewal when everything is great in the economy, you can expect a much larger increase. When things aren't so good, and that's kind of what happened there. They didn't get huge increases, but enough that you're seeing it on the tax levy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a small increase for 195 or 200, people adds up to, something you can't just cut away with paper clips and pencils.
Exactly.
Okay, one other question. Oh, fuel. Last year's budget, you talked about hybrid, I think some hybrid vehicles that you were purchasing, hoping to avoid or mitigate some of the $5 a gallon gas costs. Can you, has that, did you get the vehicles? Were you able to find them?
Yep.
And did you is that effective for you? Are you realizing those cost savings?
Yes, we dropped fuel 71,000 from this year to 24. And a lot of it has to do with the increased mileage.
And then, are those vehicles that you have to plug in, or do they recharge as through like regenerative braking or whatever?
No, it's not it's a hybrid vehicle, but it's not an electric vehicle.
Okay.
So it's much probably like most people drive, where it shuts off. Much more efficient, though.
Yeah. Okay. That is all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here, Sheriff Motz. So if and hopefully when, just wait, I didn't want you.
No, you're
I didn't
good.
want you to be distracted. So
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No disrespect taken.
One of my backup singers.
Yep. If and hopefully when we can get you these two positions. Is this going to mark a significant increase in your convictions? Is this going to mean that we're going to have more people in the local jail? And what is the current jail population sitting at? And I'm just looking ahead, trying to look down, because I know you're trying to be extremely proactive with the things you're doing, and I didn't hear anything about any of this. So
Today's count was 224. It was 235 yesterday. People went to court, got out. It's been at that 220 mark for quite some time, very solid. Will this make a difference? We will be holding people more accountable. There's no doubt. But oftentimes we're dealing with such serious crimes that they're prison sentences. So they're with us shortly while they go through the process, the court system, and then they move on to prison. When you're dealing large quantities of fentanyl or enticing children online, typically that is a prison sentence.
And I guess as a follow-up to that, say you get on to somebody who's over in Calumet County, enticing children in Winnebago County. Do they get taken into custody in Calumet County and kept in Calumet County, or will we bring them back here?
You could do either. I mean, the DA's not here, but you could do it either way. If it's that local, we probably would ship it over to them. Mm-hmm. But it depends. Like I talked about, switching investigators in the middle of an investigation is very difficult, although we've done it. And we created a work group of ICAC investigators, so we're paying a lot closer attention to what other people have going on. So if we're working the same case or the same person, we pull away and we allow Brown County to work that because they're already working it. Same thing for the fraud. We have joined a group of local banks and banking institutions that are working to educate and change their policies and procedures to make it not so easy to take our money. So it's all about working together with other agencies and outside.
Okay, thank you very much.
Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, as I look at the book, your budget's going up about $1.2 million. And what I'm trying to tie together, I'm on page 227. Your regular wages show a 2.26% increase. Does that include the new contract?
No, the new contract has not been settled yet.
So we have an unknown as to what that cost is going to be?
Yes, there's money that has been set aside for that.
Okay, in anticipation of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get involved with the actual contract negotiations. That's done through Mr. Collard in HR.
So then, let me make an assumption. If this body decides to grant your request of 2 new officers, you're not concerned where the funding comes from, right?
Well, sure I'm concerned.
Well, to me, it would be difficult to add to the levy to the residents of this county, especially when I know, according to this book, we've got $25 million sitting in the unassigned fund balance. So I think it's certainly something I could favor if the money is coming from that fund balance. Then next year, when you get into that budget, it would incorporate the 300,000 increase you indicated?
Yeah, a little bit less. The 300,000 includes some additional equipment that they will need, or that, yeah.
Does that sound logical to you?
Yep, sounds very logical.
Good, thank you.
Supervisor Flom.
Just a point of order, Mr. Chairman. We do have supervisors on Zoom, namely Supervisor Stafford, who would like to ask a question of the sheriff. If he could be called on, he's had his hand up for a while.
Ask as soon as we got everybody here.
Thank you.
Supervisor Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Howdy, Sheriff. My question's about your body scanner request. So, in your narrative on page 220, you say the 9-year-old scanner will be replaced in the jail to reduce the likelihood of harmful contraband entering. How can you sort of overview how that problem now, like with contraband entering the jail?
We have had overdoses in the jail from contraband that has been brought in. Fentanyl, we've had meth, heroin that have come in. People, you use your imagination on how it's getting in. That's why we have the body scanner. But it's 10-year-old technology. This is what the state has gone to recently, so we'll be under state contract. And it's just a much better system for us to stop that contraband from coming in. And one in custody death where that gets into our facility can cost us extensively in a lawsuit.
And you have like verification through numbers or something that the replacement technology is up to the task, like it does meet the needs that the current system is not meeting?
Yes, it has. New software package has the ability to actually point out to the user where something abnormal is, where we were trying to read scans that are of pretty low definition.
Okay, thank you. And then page 232, the capital outlay, the last item on that list is the body scanner listed at 100,000. And then on 239 from the jail improvements fund, there's also the body scanner at 30,000. Is that the same scanner?
It is. We're just using part of the money out of the jail improvement fund, the rest to be covered by capital.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sheriff Motz. last year was, what, you said 2022, this county board made the decision to give the sheriff's department a $3 increase. Can you talk a little bit about that as far as, I remember before then, quite a few budget sessions before then, recruitment and retention were quite the issue in the sheriff's department. Has what this county board done, has that helped slow some of that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're very competitive. We're not the highest paid. As a matter of fact, I don't know exactly, but I know we're not the highest paid within the county itself. Between Oshkosh and Neenah are higher, Menasha's higher, but we're right in there with Fox Crossings. And it's not about like having the most money. It's about at least being close. And that, $3 an hour times 2,000 hours is $6,000 raise. That's substantial. And if I can go and maybe I don't leave to go to a $5 an hour job, that's more because I got that $3. And that's what we saw happen. It stabilized the influx of people that we have, which is why we only will have one opening by the time one or two openings by the time this all settles out at the end of the year.
Sure. Thank you for that. And do you know about what your retention rate is for the sheriff's department?
Well, I can tell.
Has it been higher since we made the decision here that?
Yes. When you do the 5-year,
Yep.
it's not good.
Uh-huh.
It's a 70% turnover. That's huge. We've hired 134 and lost 136. Now, we're hitting a time where a lot of people are retiring. Like I said, I got 4 retirements that are occurring in December. I mean, having somebody that stays here 28 years is what we look for. So it's not everybody left for a greener pasture, but certainly that's tough to catch up to. But we've done that, and now it's just getting everybody trained, and we're going to see our overtime reduced, et cetera.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the sheriff's department, they don't have merit pay, is that correct?
They do not.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An interesting jujitsu just happened here. Most department heads, all of them today, have come to us, including the executive, talking about the significant changes in their budget over from last year to this year. And your presentation started with what you want that's not in there. When the sheriff's department is already requesting a 5.10% increase in the levy or over the 2023 budget, there's an additional $1 million being set aside to cover labor negotiations, which will probably result in wage and salary increases for those folks. And when you add those two together for 2023, it's a 9.43% increase to the sheriff's department's tax levy. And then add the 2 positions that you're requesting on top of that. So other departments that have been here and are still about to present have found reductions in their own budgets when asking for additional positions. They have reduced their own costs, they've increased revenues, and they've minimized their levy increases. Help me understand today why the sheriff's department is different from all of those.
We don't receive revenues like many other departments. We're limited on the amount of grants that we get. We're not eligible for a lot. We don't charge for the services we provide, nor would you want us to. We could increase, as Supervisor Powers pointed out, we could increase instead of 12 cents a minute per call, we could increase that to 20. There'd be a significant increase in revenue. We could reduce the number of hours we have medical staff on site in the jail to 16. That would reduce it significantly. There are things that we can do, but is that really what you want us to do? Law enforcement as a whole typically takes the largest portion of the tax levy because we don't have those other resources to cover those costs. It's not just this sheriff's office, it's other sheriff's offices. When you look at law enforcement costs per capita, we're 71 out of 72 counties, the lowest. So I understand what you're saying, but I also know that it's costly, and public safety is costly. But it's something that our citizens expect.
And at the same time, the sheriff's office has reduced services to certain parts of the county. So in my eyes, with the cost of law enforcement being so high as you've described it, perhaps law enforcement is one of the first areas that could really dig into the possibility of using those innovation grants that are provided by the state of Wisconsin in the latest budget and find ways to consolidate services or buildings and share them with other counties going forward.
There are certain limitations to what you're asking about because statutory requirements don't allow us to do a lot of that. So I'm not aware of innovative grants that would reduce the tax levy as you say. There's not a lot out there for what you're asking for.
Mm-hmm. Supervisor Bender.
I guess, how do we compare with Outagamie County? Do they have more people doing that than we do? That's why we need to add it to, so that we're even with them, or
Yep.
how does that work?
Hold on, I have it. I got a mess. Outagamie County has 8 detective sergeants, 3 deputy investigators, MEG ICAC, Special Victims Unit, and 1 lieutenant. We have 7 detectives and 2 lieutenants, and the lieutenant that you met maybe a couple years ago, Mike Seawall, was promoted to that position and is now in charge of that Special Victims Unit. So compared to Outagamie County, they have 12, we have 9. This would put us at 11. I can give you a couple other ones. Sheboygan, which is much smaller, has 11. Brown, 19. Fond du Lac, 9. That's it for counties.
And just for reference, the sheriff did cut 14 positions over the last 2 years, so he's only asking for a couple back.
Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a comment that whenever you defund the police, lawlessness increases drastically.
Supervisor Depperding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to the STAR program, it sounds like, there's some really good things brewing there. And I'm certainly interested in how that could possibly reduce our nonviolent drug offenders in the jail. And so just kind of looking at that, going forward, when do you think would be a good time for us to get some statistics on how the STAR program has reduced the nonviolent drug offenders incarcerated in our jail?
Yeah, we got a year's worth of data. We're let me see it once. I had them grab it, but it's only been a year, and we have 473 participants, 72 still in jail, 401 have been released. 91 of the released were taken to sober living or other facilities. 43 out of the 91 are still in recovery and sober. And the other 310 either have not been released yet or were not wanting immediate service upon release. So it's about convincing them as well. When will we see, we're going to have to get a little bit of time to check recidivism data, like whether they're committing more crimes or not, which to the point of the supervisor that asked about that, this STAR program, we're hoping reduces jail counts because they're not committing that ancillary crime to support their habit.
Very good. Yeah, that I think those numbers are very critical, for us to just to make sure that we're on the right track. And I suppose, this is just something that we can just nurture in the long run. Maybe we could discuss that at the future Safe Streets meetings and just keep it going. That's all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing, I cringe when I hear the word defund. 25 million is not defunding anything. You're asking for a couple of additional positions, and we're discussing those positions. I would hate for the Herald to run an article that we're defunding the police department, so the sheriff's department. The other thing, I don't understand exactly where the water patrol fits into anything. I think everybody here certainly wonders and questions about a boathouse that still isn't available. I don't know if we were able to use that patrol boat without having a place to put it. And are we reimbursed by the Coast Guard or anybody for, in my location, I see the Sheriff's Patrol out there a lot, which I guess is a good thing most of the time. How is that money funded, and do we get reimbursed?
We do get reimbursed at about 75% of the rate for labor, so 25% is on our tax levy. It's a statutory requirement, so it's not that, certainly we could put a deputy in a canoe and say that meets our boating enforcement, but it doesn't, right? So we want to do this.
A canoe.
We want to make sure it's done right, and keeping people safe. We saw there's been the crash that occurred with the party boat, and the propensity for bad things to happen, and they have. Look at the number of fatalities we've had on the lakes and the waterways, and we have so much of it here. The expectation of our boaters, our shore owners, is that we're out there. And it is 75% reimbursed, and there's also some depreciation for the boat as well that we receive in revenue.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Supervisor Stafford on Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Actually three questions, but a comment first. I think one of the reasons why this presentation is so different than the other departments is the other departments actually had an opportunity to sit down with administration and talk through their budget. Unfortunately, the sheriff did not have that opportunity, so he had to have this conversation amongst us. And yet another reason why I think we need to reevaluate the process in which we use to budget going forward. With that, I heard a few things from administration last night that I really do want you to comment on so we can better understand the complexity of this. The first one was, the comment was made that with the change in policy of how we patrol the 41 corridor, that actually freed up a fair amount of resources for the sheriff's office. And I'd like you to just comment on that piece. And the second piece was with staffing. And he made the comment that you were able to quite easily just use your current staffing to fill this MEG position that, again, is currently open. And just so everyone understands, there's no one from Winnebago County on the MEG unit right now, yet Winnebago County represents, I think it was 40% of the effort of the unit itself. So would you be able to comment on those two items first, please?
Sure. I did comment on the I-41 corridor, 441, and the changes. Those should have been the municipalities and the town, or the villages' responsibility from the very beginning. Once they annexed, crossed the highway, it was their responsibility. We took that, we didn't leave them high and dry. We have a car that's on 41, and it's actually, we're able to do more enforcement because that's the only thing we have. We have the other 4 cars are going out to the more rural areas and taking calls for service and being proactive with traffic enforcement. But again, 5 people. Now this morning, all 4 of those cars that were in the rural area came out to 41. That's where we had to put our resources. That's the allocation that we needed to do. As far as the MEG position is concerned, I stated it before, 40% of the seized drugs came from this county, and we do not have anyone working it in that MEG unit position. So it's critical that we get somebody there that can actually be a conduit between the Lake Winnebago area MEG unit and our agency to hold people accountable for trafficking.
So let me ask it another way. How much time savings did we really see when the policy had changed with the patrolling of 41?
None.
So
there was zero. That didn't free a car to do some special duty. They still are on 41, still enforcing traffic, still responding to the calls that are our jurisdiction, that we are the primary responder to, and assisting the other agencies that have jurisdiction on I-41 and 441.
Okay. And I just want to mimic, I think it was brought up before, but just to highlight the fact that your staffing in terms of the last several years, we've actually seen, from a department point of view, a reduction in overall headcount, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Right. And how many deputies do we have again in the county, and how does that compare?
How many detectives?
Yes.
Yeah, so we currently have 7 detectives, 2 lieutenants. Outagamie has 11 detectives, 1 lieutenant. Sheboygan, 9, 2 lieutenants. Brown County, 17 plus an analyst plus a captain, and 9 in Fond du Lac.
Okay. So is it fair to ask then, are we strapped then to take current resources and fill these 2 positions? We do need to highlight the fact that we have to add 2 detective positions in order for us to fully staff these areas versus just trying to backfill them.
That's correct. And, look at what's happened this last year. Go back a year and then come forward. We had a double homicide in the town of Wolf River. We took Amro's homicide that occurred in their jurisdiction. We just had a fatal car crash last week that will more than likely result in, well, it's going to result in a very major investigation and could lead to charges, et cetera. These are not things that are done in a vacuum and done in a very short period of time. So those detectives are extremely busy with all of those cases as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you. One last question from me. One of the topics of conversation that comes up regularly from administration is setting priorities, understanding what is mandatory services, what's required to be provided by the county. So are the 2 requested detective positions mandated by state statute? Are we required to have them?
No, they're not required to have any certain number. It's based on workload.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor Zelmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, just a general question. The number of fatal crashes in Winnebago County, Are we higher or lower this year compared to other years?
We're higher this year than we have been in the past. When I first started, I mean, we were in that 25, 30. Then we saw it really drastically reduce, but now we're incrementally moving up again. And it's a lot of inattentive driving. It's a lot of not paying attention going from point A to point B.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for you, Sheriff.
Yes.
Just about the same as last year. You said that as far as on 41 there, that the cars were supposedly switched around on that, and then you just got done telling Supervisor Stafford that it really didn't relieve any cars. How are you getting back out to the rural areas more than what you were? Because in the beginning, you had said that you had heard what I had said last year.
Yep.
So I was wondering what your answer to that is.
Yeah, we are getting out to the rural areas now. And the reason is instead of having 4 of the 5 cars overlap on I-41, because it required, when you take all of those jurisdictions we were doing their work for, it required those 4 cars. Now that we've got them doing their part, we kept a car on 41 to assist with them, help them with calls and take care of our primary areas on 41, and move the other 4 cars out into the rural areas. So maybe I didn't understand his question exactly, but I would hope that you've seen more of a presence in. I know that I've gotten some I've gotten kudos from some of the rural areas on seeing deputies, and some complaints about getting tickets where they never saw anybody before. So
Well, that's one way to get a kudo, I'll tell you.
yeah, right, yeah. What are you guys doing here?
I know they used to stop in and more often, like at the town meetings and things, and there for a while, and then right after we had spoke last time, they did stop in. But
Yeah.
now here again, we're right back to where they're not. So I just a comment that the people out there do notice.
Yeah, and we could, we try to get them to those meetings, but if they get a call,
Right.
they're going to answer that call for service. And calls have picked up in our rural areas as well.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right. Do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right, I thank you very much. Medical examiner. Before you start, Cheryl, how long do we want to keep going? I said 4 o'clock. Do we want to try and work through this? How
Mr.
late?
Chair?
Some are saying yes, some are saying no, so should we keep going at least for a while here, at least to get through whatever we can here?
I need my beauty sleep. I gotta go trick or treating.
So, you got your costume already on, so.
We go into Thursday.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that, Cheryl.
Hello. I don't know. Cheryl Bramer with the Medical Examiner's Office. Obviously, I do my best to try and keep my budget close, the levy close to it. You're going to see a pretty significant increase again this year that I'm asking for, which is going to be in that same portion of the budget that keeps going up every year. So it would be under the contractual services is where the bulk of that is. Part of the reasoning for this is, like Sheriff Motz had said, so far this year we already have 41 confirmed overdoses. We have 6 pending. Of those 6 pending, they're probable to also be overdoses due to substance on scene or rapid screens that were done on the decedent that came back positive. We still have 2 months to go. We're already past our highest year. Our suicides, once again, we're at the beginning of November tomorrow, and we are on pace for what we were at the end of last year. We had 5 homicides in the county. Last year we had 1. Previous we had 3. and our accidents are also up. Right now, we're at 90. In 2021, we had 95. Last year, we had 106, and 106 was our highest. But we're 16 away from that as well. Another portion of what did increase, it was a small increase, but I wanted to make the board aware, is the cost for indigent cases. I did bump that up due to the fact that we are having more and more families that financially cannot take care of their loved ones, so they're walking away, or they're unwilling. So, like I said, that's not a significant increase, but it is a bump, and it is a trend that we're seeing more of towards the end of this year. I think people are financially hurting, and they're having a hard time. Going back to specifics on the budget increase, on page, all of this is actually going to be on page 247 with object code 55000. That's our medical and dental. That will be going up due to the increase in toxicology that we are drawing and sending off. I would say even 10 years ago, we did not send in toxicology as much as we do now. In 2023, 12 of the overdoses that we have are over the age of 50. We have at least 4 of them that are over the age of 70. So we are finding people who do have a drug history that are either continuing or they're falling back into it. So we have to be a little bit more, I guess, cautious, delve a little bit deeper into things, other than saying they're 71, they have these medical conditions, obviously it's natural. If there's something in their background or something that is unseen, then we're obviously continuing to investigate further, and we're having cases, like I said, that are coming back that initially thought were natural, and they're coming back as overdoses. Another part of that increase is the pricing of the toxicology testing. This year it was $223 for just an expanded blood toxicology. No specialty services, that is going up to $245 per test. And then the cost for our specialty services for the forensic anthropology, our odontology. The second part would be pathology, the 55010. Same thing, we're having, increased autopsies. The average used to be 85. Last year we did 104. This year we're at 84 already. Increase in pricing for Fond du Lac is going to go up. Was $1,400, it is now going to be $1,700. Yeah. And then we are back up when Fond du Lac pathologist is either out of the office or on vacation, is Walworth County. So we're going down to the bottom of the state, and they charge $1,700. So we already have 32 of our cases that had to go to Walworth. These were cases that we couldn't wait for the pathologist in Fond du Lac to come back. Our double homicides, our officer involves, those happened while he was either on vacation or at conference, or so once again, we have that increased cost, and there's nothing we can do about it other than maybe hold them for 12, 15 days, and that's just it's not probable, especially in criminal cases. The third one would be, again, the transportation, which is 55026. As always, with the increase on autopsies, we're seeing the increase for transportation services, the storage fees. I have not yet gotten word that they will be raising that, but I'm assuming that that cost will probably come. One of the other things with the transportation is when somebody goes to Fond du Lac for autopsy, they are taken down. Usually we get charged $150 for that initial removal, $225 for the transportation down to Fond du Lac. So Usually, that is the extent of it. The funeral home comes and gets it. When we're taking somebody down to Walworth, we also have to have them transported back. We can't put it on the family to pay the charge, you know what I mean, to bring them back from Walworth County, from Elkhorn. So with that transportation, each case that we have sent down is $750. It's $325 to take them down, or $375, I'm sorry, and then we also bring them back, plus we have the storage fees on that. Like I said, as of now, we already have 32 cases that went down to Walworth out of the 84. Let's see, the only other thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was, and it's not budget related, but yet it is I'm concerned about the overdose trends and the direction that things are going. We have seen a significant decrease in the methamphetamine and fentanyl, but we've seen a huge increase in the cocaine and fentanyl. Cocaine overdoses cannot be reversed. So even with Narcan, you can't reverse them. The only thing that you can do is treat the symptoms as they come up, and that's if they get to the hospital in time to be able to do that. We also, in the last month, we have had different substances that are coming back that are in it's called the nitazene family. It's a synthetic opioid, and depending upon which one is put in, it's 9 times, 25 times, 40 plus times more potent than fentanyl. We're seeing more and more. We had, a couple weeks ago, we had 2 toxic reports that came in back to back. Additionally, now we're also starting to see the synthetic benzodiazepines come in, which is extremely scary because them as well they can't be reversed. Benzodiazepines are, and not to be morbid about it, but they are the #1 method of suicide for people that work in the medical field, because the effects of that benzo overdose cannot be reversed. They have a high chance for being able to donate their organs, but the anoxic brain injury that occurs from that overdose not being able to reverse is detrimental. And those we are also seeing. Just had a report with bromazepam and atizolam, and that was within the last couple weeks as well. We have not had any of our toxicology come back with xylazine in it. The last one that we had was actually last year, but I do have people from different ERs that are reporting they believe it's in the area because they are having people come in with what they believe is xylazine wounds or ulcers. So I think that's pretty much what I have, hoping that it explains why my budget in the contractual is going up. So
Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cheryl, thank you for your presentation today. Just looking at line 55026 on page 247, those transportation costs, as you mentioned, I anticipate those are going to continue to go up until our morgue is complete, and that has been frustratingly behind schedule. Do you have an update on that by chance?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not. I don't believe it has even gone out to bid yet, but
Okay.
I know that Mike Elder is coming to Judiciary next Monday.
Okay.
And we'll talk.
Because,
Yes.
I mean, this is a project that has been approved, I mean, it's been approved so long ago, it's not even in the capital outlay for this budget.
Right.
So it's frustrating that it's taking that long. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I understand that building things can take longer lead times and whatnot, but we are literally paying the price for that.
Right.
So I would encourage all due expediency. Thank you.
We ourselves have situations where we're frustrated, where
Right.
things could run so much more efficiently.
Sure.
I had a case last week. I waited an hour and a half for a funeral to come from the southern part.
Right.
Only for me to have to drive down to that funeral home the next day to do a toxicology.
Then the last thing I have is your coordination with OFR and the Safe Streets Initiative and Solutions Recovery and whatnot. Are you coordinating with them specifically with OFR, and how are you finding that coordination to go if you are currently?
I'm sorry.
The Overdose Fatality Review Board. how is the coordination with that team going?
I'll be flat out honest. I have had one person from our office go and represent.
Okay.
So I do intend to go back to them next, or actually it'll be tomorrow. Even though I'm on call, to speak of one of the cases that we are reviewing is going to be my case. With the, I don't want to say frustration, bump in the road with the health department and the harm reduction. I just thought it would be better that I did not go and represent our office when I was afraid I couldn't be 100% civil,
Sure.
we'll say.
No, I completely understand, and I appreciate your candidness with that. Thank you.
I'm too short, I know.
Supervisor Defferding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I don't want to belabor the morgue issue, but we will be discussing that at the next JPS meeting. I made it a point to have it to be an agenda item, so I encourage all the supervisors to come, just so we can kind of unpack what has been creating this delay. I asked this question before at JPS as well, and maybe you can just illustrate to the board what, this could, when you get a morgue, this can actually turn into something where it's revenue generating rather than something where we're spending money. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. The exam room that will be in the morgue will be able to create or generate revenue for that. Currently we try and work with the hospitals to use their facilities to set up for any type of tissue or eye donation. Otherwise, ATSF does it as well. But then those decedents are transported to Mercy Medical, and for the use of that room, they receive that revenue.
Yep, and of course, furthermore, there's no travel time.
Right.
So that's and this is something that I made an allusion to at a previous county board meeting, that we're expecting to see this increase, in your budget because of this. I'm hoping that next year you're going to be singing a better tune, so to speak, financially. That's all. Thank you.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to also talk about contractual services. So I want to start with the pathology services line.
Yes.
You've mentioned Walworth and Fond du Lac.
Yes.
Those are both county-run, or are they private?
Fond du Lac is county-run. Walworth, we work through the Walworth County Medical Examiner's Office, but we have a private pathologist.
Okay. Are there other pathologists in the state, or are those the two that people work with?
Dane County would be one. They normally have about 5 pathologists. They have what we call a doc and a half. They have a full-time and a part-time, so they're hurting very bad right now. Brown County only has 1. They do not do referral counties because they already have Brown County, Door, O'Connell under their jurisdiction. We did work with Milwaukee for a while. We can no longer work with Milwaukee because they want all or nothing. So they won't allow us to pick and choose. We could work some of our cases with UW-Madison, but again, they don't really want to do our criminal. So we can send them cases, but if there's anything possibly criminal about it, then they say no thanks.
Okay.
So.
And those places all seem, pretty close to as far away as Walworth County.
Right.
Is there any, I'm assuming Fond du Lac is like experiencing the same crunches as these other places are, right? And you mentioned that, we do have to use Walworth because sometimes Fond du Lac isn't even available. We are not unique in experiencing more overdose fatalities, right? That's something every county is. And,
right.
So if trends continue, is the capacity at Fond du Lac and Walworth still probably sufficient, or are you going to start having to look for more pieces of patchwork to build this quilt with?
So Fond du Lac only has 1 pathologist. So when he's out, then we end up going to Walworth. The other counties are having the same issue, so now they're using Fond du Lac more. So now again, that's putting our cases back further. If Fond du Lac, if he is out and Walworth is booked because they are now starting to, other counties are starting to hear, so they're trying to help them out, then that's exactly it. Then we're either stuck waiting or we're stuck finding somebody else to try and do it. The two that we do work with, Fond du Lac and Walworth, are amazing. So,
And like, there's not a ton of pathologists around, right? Like
No,
that's a
there's
real,
not.
yeah, okay. So, have you looked at like having our own in-house pathologist? And can you, or, I mean, I understand it's not, it's not like going out and finding, I don't know, a podiatrist or,
Right.
maybe something, I don't know, maybe that's not a abundant field either, I don't know.
right, I mean, I guess I haven't because one, where would I even begin to look when ME's offices that are pathology-led are already having an issue? Even with the new morgue, the examination room, the autopsy suite or whatever that's there is going to be very minimal to what is needed. But my hope is there are a few pathologists that I know that are thinking of retiring, but they will possibly work part-time and they will travel. So it would be something that would be suitable for them to come, you know what I mean, to do. That is my hope, that at some point we'll have more traveling pathologists that will be able to come to us.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those train wrecks we can see coming down the line a little bit in terms of, a little bit of things go awry and all of a sudden you're spending your time scrambling to figure out what facilities we can use on top of delaying, potentially delaying really important time-sensitive work.
Right.
And to Supervisor Stafford's point, potentially revenue options. I don't think anybody thinks this is gonna, this is gonna reverse, and we're gonna need less pathology services in the future. And I can only imagine that the unit increases are only going to continue as the complexity of the screens,
Right.
Develops. I mean, it's every one of those new classifications, I'm assuming, takes, I don't know anything about science here, so, different enzymes or proteins or some science word to figure out and that probably all means more cost. So, appreciate your diligence in in reviewing that and keeping options open.
Thank you.
Supervisor Ellenberger.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your report. I really appreciate it. You're always very eye-opening and honest with what is actually going on, and I thank you for that. I'm assuming it can be kind of sad sometimes at your job when you see all this and you see the trends, and it's got to be kind of worrisome, especially considering that we haven't even hit the holidays yet.
Right.
And I know that once the holidays hit, you see probably getting a little bit worse.
Yes.
So you mentioned the 70-plus-year-olds. I guess I had never, I didn't think about that. Now, is it like an assisted suicide type of thing that they're doing because they're 70-plus and maybe they have terminal cancer or something? No,
No, these are
the previous
recreational
drug users.
These are
Gotcha.
recreational users.
And then with the toxology stuff, I know we send all that out, correct?
Yes.
And I'm assuming it's less expensive to send it out as opposed to keep it in-house or to do it in-house? We just don't have the abilities. No, okay.
Even Cook County does not do theirs in-house. Cook County, Illinois,
So
for
they
Chicago.
all have labs
Yes, it
elsewhere.
is.
Gotcha.
Yes.
I was just thinking about the fees and the everything, and I'm like, wow. I mean, it's not going to get any less.
Right.
I mean, you got the
Right.
1,700 for, I mean, all that, So anyway, okay. Just thank you for everything. That's
Thank
all I
you.
have. Thanks.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Let's see, how do I want to pose this? So Joe Public is out there, and I told him it was $1,400 for an autopsy.
Yep.
Didn't include the toxicology. Told him that it was pretty expensive for transportation. So when you have overdoses, are most of those requiring autopsies?
Yes.
And are most of those passed off to the county taxpayers to pay? Because a family can say, no go here, this person is indigent, doesn't have anybody, So are we bearing those costs as taxpayers?
Yes.
So we're bearing the transportation, we're bearing the overdose cost, or the autopsy cost?
Yes.
And who decides about toxicology? Is that more on the criminal side of it?
Toxicology is automatically a part of, the autopsies that we have done are full forensic autopsies.
Okay. So I'd have to add that 245.
Yeah.
Okay. So by the time we get done, there's 1,000. So it's costing a taxpayer $3,000.
It's a significant cost, yes. I had looked into, do we possibly need to be autopsying all of them? Because a lot of times it's going to come down to our toxicology results. That's what's going to tell us. The issue is if they are able to find somebody criminal responsible for selling to them,
Yeah.
as a county, the DA is going to need what's called a negative autopsy. So they're going to have that toxicology stating what is in their system, how much is in their system, and they also need that negative autopsy to say these amounts of substances are what caused their death. They didn't have an aneurysm, they didn't have a heart attack, they didn't have a stroke. They need to be able to say there is no natural reason why this person is deceased. So for me, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So not just the overdoses, you could have a death that's suspicious.
Right.
But not criminal.
True.
Perhaps.
True.
And that requires an autopsy. Not necessarily?
Not necessarily. It depends upon our investigation.
Okay.
So.
And how long can someone keep a body before it's no longer autopsy time? I mean, because we don't have freezers and all that.
Right. No, we're using the transportation company right now. They have a storage, and we're getting charged
so we're
for
paying
storage.
For storage,
right.
One way or another.
Right.
Okay. So if you say there's 41, did all of those overdoses have an autopsy in this whole?
Yes.
Yes.
No, actually, not all of them are going to. Some of the overdoses that were consistent with prescription overdoses.
Okay.
Those, and they were actually prescribed to the people, we drew toxicology. There's no criminal aspect there. You know what I mean? They chose to, either abuse or take all of them. But we still need to know what those levels are that are in there.
So of the overdoses we've had so far this year, how many of people in the family or a friend or whatever stepped up and said, I'll cover this?
We, as a county, we pay for
it no matter what.
No matter what, we pay for it. They pay for disposition. Once that autopsy is completed, then outside of, if it's Walworth, we transport them back. If it's Fond du Lac, the funeral home goes and gets them.
So this county is paying for all of that?
Yes, we always have been.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Joe Public will really be interested in that. Okay. So other autopsies, other than overdoses, how many of those do you have? Is that pretty rare?
So we've had I think we've had 84 autopsies so far.
Wow.
Some of them are going to be auto accidents. Some 4 of them are the aviation crashes that went down. Those are automatic.
Yeah.
The homicides obviously are automatic. Not all of our suicides are autopsied. Some of them, if there is something that is different or concerning, I had a case that they hung themselves, but they actually did like a perfect hangman's noose and it was a very young person. So, and then the way everything was set up, it could have been staged, or it could have, if we have situations like that, then we'll autopsy, but not all of them get done.
So is it you and the sheriff's department that
Yes.
pretty much the investigator and yourself determine
Yes.
which way we go.
Yes, we make that decision. There are times that they push for one and we say no, and these are our reasons why.
Okay.
And there are times where they say, oh, I don't think we need one, but I have it done, you know, I have a double fatal auto accident and both of them were in the back seat. Who was driving?
Yeah, right.
So
Okay.
autopsy was able to tell me which injuries are consistent with the person that was behind the wheel. So I mean, we work together.
So your budget going up, I can see why this is happening. I can't control it, you can't control it.
No.
It's a fact of life that the county pays for this.
Right.
So,
Once the morgue is built, like I said, that transportation cost, that it's continuing to go up, will come down greatly. I mean, obviously, we'll have fuel, we'll have maintenance on,
Right.
you know, we need a minivan. The Explorer that we have is already fitted to be ready to use. So I mean, that part's gonna go up, but that's gonna be a huge, you know, cost saving as far as that goes. Yeah, I
we
mean,
just have
there's
to
just so
get
many.
it built.
Yeah.
And it is out for bids.
Yeah.
I think it bids mid-November. So
Yeah.
amen, it'll bid soon.
Yeah.
But thank you for that information, I appreciate it.
Supervisor Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. I've got a couple of questions for you. One of them is going to be personal, and that is, how do you take care of yourself? You're involved in chronic care here.
I honestly, I do a lot of hiking, a lot of walking, and I have a dog who has heard everything over the last 12 years. So,
Well,
and he doesn't mind, so.
Thank you for doing what you're doing, because I've been involved in chronic care, and I know how it disturbs the soul. The next one is overdoses. Are they considered suicide?
Not all of them, no.
Okay.
No, majority of them are considered accidental. Majority of them are not using to
kill
themselves. They're, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Just two thoughts. First was the question that Supervisor Schellinger asked about pathology. We actually talked about that. And I just wanted to add, from what you had said, the first is there's a shortage overall of pathologists. And it's also very expensive to set up. Very, very, like millions and millions of dollars to set this functionality up.
Yes.
However, I think that this could be a significant revenue source for the county and would really help a service to the county. So hopefully, maybe sometime in the future, we can possibly have a conversation about adding this as an area that we can further develop within the county, because I think it would be a fantastic thing and would be, you know, a great revenue source as well. And the other is controlling the costs, right? And as was mentioned, it's hard to control. However, I will just reemphasize here that, you know, we have two significant issues in the county that I feel like we're not addressing totally. First is this overdose.
Yes.
It's a significant issue, and healthcare is also a significant issue. So if you look at what's driving your costs, it's overdose and it's suicides. We, as county, can help control that through social programs, through prevention, like within the sheriff's office, within Health and Human Services. I believe that this should be a priority for the county. When we talk about the priority-based budgeting, this would be an area that I think we need to. So I think that we can control it. We just have to get a handle on how these things can help your office. And that's one of the pieces that I think that we do need to figure out as well.
Absolutely. I will say that with overdose fatality review, I've been in it since the beginning. The one thing that is consistent throughout most all cases is mental health. So.
Supervisor Zelmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cheryl, I take it full or part-time pathologist is really needed in our county? And how much would that cost us? And would we have to add equipment or a building, so the cost of let's say a full-time pathologist
Yes.
plus equipment, how much would that be?
You're talking millions, because you're going to have more than one autopsy suite. You'll have to have more than one walk-in cooler. You have to have the ability to X-ray. Yeah, to have a full-time, I mean, do I think eventually this county's going to need it? Yeah, I do, and I think the revenue that it would bring in would be great, but it's going to be, it's a huge amount of money you're talking to get stuff up and running, and then to find one.
So maybe it would not be advantageous financially for us at this
Right.
time.
Right. I think my hope, like I said, is to eventually be able to contract with also a couple traveling. So they'll just come to us. And one, you know what I mean, would be, obviously, we wouldn't have them come to one where they need full-body x-rays or anything like that. I mean, but
Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cheryl, I want to go back on what Stafford talked to you about there and what the last one was about. This could be an opportunity for Winnebago County. We're right in the middle of the state. If we'd had to have a center like that, this could pay for a lot of the things that you're working on right now. I really think we should be spending more time thinking about this. Even it is $1 million. We have a lot of money in the unassigned area right now, so maybe this is the time to do it.
I could do more digging into it, but I'm going to guess that we're looking at tens of millions.
Is it? Oh, okay.
To
It's
get
not
it
one
going,
or
not
two.
just
Oh, okay.
yeah. If it was $1 million, I would have asked that with the evidence garage. You know what? Let's set us up.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah,
Well, we're right in the middle of the state. I'd
I
love
know.
to take advantage of that.
I know.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's do this. Let's just have this as a topic area for JPS.
Okay.
And that way we can fully flesh this out over the next several months just to see what this could be. And it might be a matter of timing. I mean, I think what you're saying is that right now it's not prudent, but we don't know as we look out into the future and really what the cost would be. And I think that's a great conversation for committee. Thanks.
I don't see any more lights, so thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Next is emergency management.
Cheryl's a little shorter than I am. Good afternoon, everybody. Eric Rasmussen, Emergency Management Director for the county. Not a lot changed is in my budget from last year to this year. Significant changes. The only significant changes of note were our pay increases due to the wage assessment. And we purchased a vehicle last year out of the capital funds that we are not purchasing, obviously, again this year because we purchased that last year. A couple of things of note or questions that we had at a committee level. My office is pretty heavily grant funded. We have two main grants that we get every year that are about $135,000 for our plan of work deliverables for preparedness for the county. And one of the things that you'll notice if you look back the last few years, there's been some ups and downs in our revenue in that grants category, and then those are offset in our professional services category. A lot of the grants that we've been pursuing in my office for training and planning and mitigation are things that are available not annually or not annually that we are qualified for. So those are things as they become available, we pursue them and obviously address that with you guys when they're available for us. So it's kind of what I have. My budget did not change a lot from last year, so if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Your luck, is there anyone on Zoom? You lucked out? Okay, I'm going to at least go through this next part here in what are you all thinking? I know we hemmed and hawed. 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock, okay. 4 o'clock we'll be stopping, but we'll go through transportation and public works. Turn this page, now how do I get it back? Airport.
We're first under transportation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Appreciate being here today in front of you. I just want to start off by thanking the entire Winnebago County Board for their support of the airport the last few years. I know this is the operating budget for all of the departments within the county, but in the last 3.5-ish years, we put in almost $20 million in capital infrastructure out at the airport. 11.3 million of that was funded through federal and state grants, and 7 million of that came from the county. Those three major projects that I'm talking about are Taxiway Alpha's reconstruction in 2020, our airport general aviation terminal facility in 2021, and this year we're finishing up this coming month our first hangar project in well over 20 years. We look back, it's been since 1996 since we constructed hangars that the county owns on the airport. So I just want to start out by saying thank you for that. The airport in general, we provide the services and facilities that the flying public and general public are looking from the airport itself. We have 4 runways, miles of taxiway, 1,450 acres of land, 80,000 plus takeoffs and landings per year, and that all contributes to about a $210 million economic impact to the region. Our primary sources of revenue are land leases. Of that 1,450 acres, we lease several hundred acres of land to different tenants around the airport, including EAA, of course. Building rentals, so primarily hangar units that we own and maintain. We are, with this new hangar project, we're actually just in excess of 100 units that we own and lease out on the airport. And then fuel flowage is kind of our third biggest line item. So for every gallon of gas, fuel, aviation fuel or jet fuel that's pumped out at the airport, we receive 10 cents per gallon fuel flowage fee. So that equates to a decent sum of revenue. On the first, I'll focus on a couple of pages in our budget section, and the first one we already talked about, the hangar project. We hosted a record turnout for AirVenture this year. It was a great year for the event, and then we also, something that's not mentioned in our budget highlights, is that we also hosted the NIFA, which is the National Intercollegiate Flight Association. I'm actually wearing their shirt today. SafeCon event, which brought in 28 flight programs from around the country, all to compete right here in Oshkosh at our airport. And that brought in excess of 700 folks between competitors, judges, and support staff to host that event here for the first time ever. So pretty proud year for us. And looking ahead to 2024, we've got a number of things that we're looking to do, which I'll highlight mostly in the significant changes section. So I'll go ahead. Our budget section starts on page 258. So I'll skip to page 260. Our levy from 2023 on the operating levy was $722,526. Down at the bottom, we're showing that staying flat, and I'll kind of run through how we get there. In the significant changes column, $57,000 is our anticipated funding from the CRRSA Act. I won't go through all the words that make up that acronym, but it's the amount that's allocated through the FAA and through the Bureau of Aeronautics to the airport to receive from that act. That'll actually go towards offsetting a project that we're looking to do in our existing hangars. On the north side of the airport, we've got some T hangars that were built in the 1970s. We're looking to go through and replace some of the floors in those hangars that are definitely in need of repair. Skipping down to building rental airport, that $67,000 and change increase is due to the revenue from the new T hangars. So we'll have a full year of revenue from the new hangar facilities for 2024. Labor wages and fringes went up. Obviously, we went through the pay study for the county this year, and
that total number is what our increase is from the outcome of that wage study and implementing those labor adjustments. Capital improvements line item, this was for replacement of the chiller and the air traffic control tower, so we've taken that out of the budget. We've got that in our 2023 budget, and we intend to either encumber those funds or carry them over to 2024, depending on how that project plays out here in the next few months. Capital equipment will be the biggest increase there. We're looking to replace a 1980 Bobcat and a 2003 Ford Expedition, one of our fleet vehicles. I can talk more about those if you got any questions about those. Motor fuel actually reduced $10,000, just the level that we have on hand going into 2024 is sufficient to reduce that a bit going to look what we'll purchase in 2024. Maintenance on buildings, that's that $57,000 back on the expense side, $57,000, and that would be for the rehab in the A and B hangar units. I'm trying to get quite a bit more years of life out of those hangars. Utilities overall going up fairly significantly in power and light and water and sewer. And then last but not least, all of these contribute to about $102,000 increase to the levy, but the county executive is proposing taking $102,943 from the airport's fund balance, which is specific to the airport, which at current time, the last figures we got from finance was sitting at $711,000 and change, would bring us back down to about $608,000. The lion's share of that would then be going towards primarily the one-time purchase of the equipment replacement. So at that rate, you know, for us it's half a dozen, 1/6 of the other where we pull those funds for, but in this case, what's being proposed won't increase our levy amount from last year to this year. Those are the significant changes. Relatively everything else has stayed fairly well the same. The next number of pages are the line items through our budget. Happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Schell. The bipartisan infrastructure laws allocated money to Winnebago County to the airport. Can you talk about that? How much money to date have we got from the bipartisan infrastructure law, and what are you planning on using that money for if you haven't used it already?
So that's a 5-year allocation that the airport is receiving. The first year was actually in the $700,000 range, just north of $700,000 that was allocated to the airport. We've used a portion of that funding for actually the hangar project that's ongoing. We got $1.3 million total in grant funding that's in the T-hangar project that we're about to wrap up. A portion of our first year's bill money is going towards that, along with some FA entitlement dollars and some state apportionment. So not all of our first year bill money was spent towards the hangar project. We're looking to roll that into future projects. With the T-hangar project that we're under construction right now, we actually designed another 9-unit building. We just didn't award that because we didn't have the funding level back when we made our contract awards for this project, but we're looking at that as a future project to bring back for consideration, one of which we can utilize the rest of our first year's bill money on that, and then possibly some other federal funds and state funds to help soften the ask to the county on the next hangar project. So we are trying to use those to the maximum potential of what we have and what we're allocated. We're really doing, I think, a great job with the State Bureau of Aeronautics on finding ways to leverage the bill money with the other pots of money that they have available through the state, of course, mostly federal dollars, in order to maximize each project that we have for grant funding.
Awesome. So total of $1.3 million coming from the feds. Is that what you said?
On the current T-hangar project, $1.3 million is a mixture of federal and state funding. All the FAA money has to be matched by the state and also the county, but in total, $1.3 million is the actual grant funding.
Gotcha.
So it's not all federal.
And would you say it's formula funding moving forward then for each year here? We're going to get X moving forward, or we're done with that?
No, it's a 5-year.
Okay.
It's a 5-year bill. So.
Excellent. Going back to 2018 or so, I mean, we have been looking, and I know you have a fantastic aviation committee looking for tenants on the airport. I've been disconnected a little bit since the airport hangar is done now. Can you give an update on, I know you were talking about going out to aviation magazines, and, in my mind, what perfect place to have an airplane business than, Oshkosh, right? And Whitman Field there. So where are you at with that? I know you had talked in the past that there were some potential folks that were looking to maybe build a business in Oshkosh on the airport. Do you have any updates for this board?
So as far as marketing efforts, primarily towards the Aviation Business Park, in 2022, we spent a good chunk of the year rebranding the park, coming up with new marketing materials, because really, whether it be going to the Greater Oshkosh EDC's website or our own website or the City of Oshkosh, they all said different things. They all kind of looked different, and we wanted a common vision, a common set of marketing tools that we could use when we're talking to these prospects. So we spent 2022 revamping those marketing efforts. We have an entire prospect folder that we give to good prospects that we have conversations with, and then we have a smaller trifold that we hand out as well. They all point as well on the electronic side to our website. It's at the OshkoshAviationPark.com. So if you go there, that's pointed to on our website. If you look on the Whitman Airport website, it'll take you right there as far as if you're looking to develop in the business park. And so we did that in 2022. We have increased almost each year the number of times we go to different conventions or different conferences that are aimed at business development on the airport, primarily for the park. But this year we went to the MRO Americas convention in Atlanta. We went to we are obviously have a big presence at AirVenture. During the event, we have an exhibit in Exhibit Hall C the last couple of years. And then we went just recently to the National Business Aviation Association convention a couple of weeks ago, and we're kind of regrouping from that now. So I would say within the last year to 18 months, we've gotten 2 new prospects that we really hadn't had on our radar prior. And we're working to get kind of a regroup meeting now with Greater Oshkosh EDC to figure out what are our next steps. So quite a bit of effort behind the scenes in attracting a business to Oshkosh or to Whitman Airport to locate in the park. But we also have other tracts of land that we're looking to develop or redevelop, one of which is the old terminal site. So we've got 300 feet of frontage where the old terminal once was, the old commercial service terminal, and 300 feet of frontage of an air carrier concrete aircraft parking apron. That is sort of one of the low-hanging fruits out there also, because you've got a multi-million-dollar investment already made, already there in pretty good shape that we can build off of. So we're looking at that, not solely focused on just the business park, but we put a lot of time and effort into it, especially the last 2 years, kind of bouncing back from the COVID times.
Excellent. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I really like you wearing the NIFA shirt. I think economic development is one of those things that doesn't get a line item in this budget, but hopefully when we start looking at programmatic budgets next year, we'll be able to really see see a narrative about how some of these things really do impact our community. I know my brother-in-law was trying to come up that weekend and was having a hard time finding a hotel room, and some of those benefits or things that don't get captured in this book are really important to the way that the county is situated or the way the county government is situated to support the county. That said, I'm going to talk about stormwater. In 2018, excuse me, in 2018, the county's item your item, the airport's item for water and sewer was $224,000. That's just 5 years ago. $480,000 now, and that's a trend. That's $50,000, $30 to $50,000 a year seems to be what is added on to our bill. That's not changing anytime soon, right?
On a whole, stormwater runoff fees is primarily what we're talking about. It is kind of goes back to the City of Oshkosh's rates. City of Oshkosh, we've paid a lot of attention to this in the last few years, is second highest in the state of Wisconsin after Madison, as far as kind of an apples-to-apples comparison to what they charge for stormwater. And so that's just the runoff going off of impervious surfaces on the facility, whether it be runways, taxiways, buildings that we own essentially, that goes into the city system. So the rates are ever increasing at the city, and that continues to be the single biggest burden on our bottom line for what we have to get for our tax levy to balance our budget.
Yeah, I mean I think that is a significant a significantly unfair portion of how your budget comes together. It's a burden that not other departments have to contend with, and there's nothing to do to mitigate it. And I think it also just masks a little bit of the good work that's gone on there. So I know when the terminal building was demolished and a new admin building, we realized some significant savings in terms of what it costs to heat the building, what it costs to keep the power on, and those numbers kind of mitigated the increase. This year we had significant increases in revenue. I mean, really significant, 13% increases in revenue at the airport, and yet it gets most of that is washed away by just the steady increase of stormwater fees. And so I just wanted to raise that. I know last year we talked a little bit, that you were always looking at ways to be creative and engage the city in that, and that some years ago there may have been some measures to reduce that. But I see that as just just sort of something that ever ratchets against the good work that's being done. And just wanted to take another minute to pause on how significant the revenue increases were. 13% is pretty large, but also not replicable, right? We can't as much as you and the tenants may want, we just don't have the time or the capacity to build new T hangars every year or whatnot. So wanted to highlight that. And then there's $100,000 roughly of airport fund balance covering your operations here. Are there one-time expenses that match that, or is that $100,000 going against recurring expenses that we'll see in the budget again next year?
Well, as far as this budget is concerned, that would primarily be the equipment replacement we're looking to do, which is a Bobcat and a fleet vehicle. So those two together are budgeted about $130,000. So if you took those out of the mix, then theoretically you wouldn't have to use any of our fund balance. But ultimately, on those type of equipment purchases, we would come back to the county board for a capital request in the normal capital cycle. And so, I guess for me, they're very much needs for the airport to replace our fleet and our equipment. And we tried to come to the county board and do it periodically each year, try in each operating budget replace some piece of equipment, so that we're not coming and not doing it for 10 years and then 10 years down the road, hey, we need $5 million worth of equipment and vehicles now. We understand that's not very sustainable. So this is something we always try to do each year, is to replace a piece of equipment or two if we can.
Okay, thanks. And then I just wanted to note the fund balance that the airport has comes from a historic contract with Oshkosh Corp, where they used to store vehicles on the airport. But that hasn't been added to in a long time, right? And it's not a fund balance like Parkview or some of the others that goes up or down. At this point, we really just project that fund to go down, right?
I'd have to defer to finance on the projections year over year where they see that headed, but it's certainly we haven't in the last 2 years taken from our airport fund balance as far as the operating budget's concerned. So yes, it has been probably downward trending over the last 5 to 10 years. I don't recall the last time we received a payment from Oshkosh Corp for truck storage. That predates my time at the airport, but it has to have been at least 7 years since we've had that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually wanted to talk about one of the things that Kobe talked about as well, which is the stormwater. And I just kind of want to drive home the point on this one, especially as somebody who served on the City Plan Commission for over a decade and dealt with a lot of these stormwater issues. Out of that $481,950, how much of that is stormwater fees?
About $450,000 ballpark.
How many locations in the city of Oshkosh pay more than the airport?
I do not know, but we're definitely one of the top ratepayers.
I would say top 5 minimum.
Sure.
When you approach the city about trying to bring that fee down, what kind of responses do you get?
Well, we actually currently receive a 36% credit on our annual stormwater bill. That was primarily due to the work we did with our Taxiway Bravo project, which Taxiway Bravo kind of parallels 20th Avenue. It's the parallel taxiway to runway 927. And we did a lot of work in that corridor between the taxiway and 20th Avenue to alleviate some flooding issues there. We worked with the city pretty closely, actually, on that project, where they contributed for the reconstruction of Knapp Street, the upsizing of the storm sewer that was going north to 20th and along that corridor. So we received the bulk of our credit is in large part due to that project. We receive that annually, so we have to keep resubmitting the paperwork each year to continue to get that, but we do. 36% is certainly a nice chunk off of our total, because if we didn't have that, we'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 if we didn't have any credit. If I may, John and I have been talking about a couple of strategies we're looking at right now to reduce it further, either through the city's existing stormwater credit policy, because that maxes out at 75% theoretically. We're roughly halfway there of their total credits we can receive. So we think there's some meat left on that bone, if you will, to continue to get future credits. But we would have to likely engage some engineering consultant, which we've already had some conversations with, in order to assess what more could we do to, maybe there's things that we're doing existing that we're not getting credit for now. But the math on that and the models the city runs through are pretty complicated. So it's not just, it's not a simple endeavor. And then we're looking at another strategy as well that may help further alleviate that line item in our budget, because we realize that it's large.
Well, and that's the reason I asked, is because I'm aware of that they have ways of mitigating some of these costs. And if you were to come back to this body and ask for funds to mitigate this cost, now we all know. I mean, we could be sitting at $700,000 if we hadn't done what we've already done. And if we can knock that down even more, there's a reason to do this. It's more of a looking down the road, looking forward kind of thing, trying to help you, Jim.
Well, that's something that we've looked at. We don't have that cost quantified of what we would need to do on an engineering perspective to figure out if we're to do more credits, or if there's some simple things that we can do on our existing property to apply for more credits. But then you get that recurring year after year. So the one-time investment theoretically pays off a lot of dividends. If you're saving an extra 10 to 15% off of our total, that's a significant amount of money on an annual basis. So we're certainly looking down some of those avenues right now.
And thank you very much for clarifying what the cost could be if we didn't have what we are getting already. So
Mike could probably run the numbers better than me, but back of the napkin, it's a little north of 650.
You're right in that ballpark, around 700,000. So that was just kind of the number I wanted to get out there and let people understand where we're sitting as far as what a big money suck this is on us and our taxpayers in this county, and how we can improve it in the future. So thanks.
Supervisor Gabbert.
I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on the airport, so I think it's a tight budget, and those funds that Jim talked about and Executive Damo took the 102 out of there, they are taxpayer funds. We got the revenue in, and it is taxpayer money. That's the only reason I'm for that, because it isn't just for the airport. So we're trying to get the budget down for all the people in Winnebago County, pilots and non-pilots. The stormwater is a terrible thing. And I know of businesses in Oshkosh that have gone and applied for credits, and they've gotten them, but every year you have to write this letter and say, yes, I still want the credit and I've done everything. I'm very interested in hiring the right engineering firm to maybe challenge that, because I think when you challenge, you might make some progress. But if you don't think, and I'll round it off, $500,000 is a lot out of our budget, I think it's terrible. But Jim was good enough to go to the city, find out what he could do. We've had other caveats. Why us? Well, we have a county airport in the city, so we're a sitting duck. Oshkosh Corp pays more than we do. That's the only one I know. I think Amcor is number three. So it's something we still could work on. So if we bring something before the board for an engineering study, I would hope And like Jim said, it would move forward. We'd have this credit or something done by the city. I think this is a terrible thing for the airport, but we're living with it. I think our grants that we've gotten from BOA and FAA help this county. We got the big grant for the admin building, and now we've got a big grant for the hangars. And as I've said before, those hangars are all rented out. We're possibly moving people in November 15th, if not by the 30th. And then that will open up some hangars, and we'll be able to get some of the 56 people off the waiting list, because for some reason or other, people like to rent hangars at the airport. And it's not because they are cheap, cheap, cheap. We have raised the rents. We go by the CPI. When we do leases, they're going up 3.2%, and we still keep the tenants. They just like the airport, and that's a good thing. And they're not all from Winnebago County. So I hope that you realize the effort that went into this budget, as we do for all departments, but we do need a couple of equipment purchases, and I hope that you don't have too many other questions on this, but I think you did a good job, and we're not supposed to praise anybody at the budget, but we worked hard. And yes, I did go to the budget meeting, and I didn't get kicked out. So thank you, Jim, for all your hard work.
Okay, we have no one on Zoom, so we thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And next up is the highway.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Damel with the Highway Department. So there's a few new faces, so just take a minute to introduce myself. This year, we're proposing no increases to our budget this year. A couple things we do, we have 81 employees, but this year we're looking at TO change. We're going to look at eliminating 3 full-time bridge tenders and 2 part-time bridge tenders. For any of you who didn't know, we do maintain the bridges and staff the bridges in Oshkosh lift bridges. We have gone to remote operations. The DOT has been working for quite a few years now with that. And as some of you know, Oregon Street Bridge will eventually be going to a fixed span. And we will be looking at potentially cutting some more bridge tenders with that and exclusively going to that remote operations. Right now, we're about 5 or 6 positions short right now between operators, mechanics. HR has done a fantastic job with recruitment and hiring. We've had a huge turnover in our department. A lot of new faces, a lot of young people. And I think we had 2 or 3 leave just in the last 2 weeks. So we're, as they're leaving, we're trying to get those staff back in here. So a few things we have to work on there. So obviously this year for us, we were very busy. We started out extremely short-staffed. Just to test to our employees how hard they worked. We put a lot of work out there. Paving projects, work for the towns and the state. One thing since COVID with the state, eliminated a lot of projects, and they're starting to reintroduce those. So we're starting to see more of the bridge epoxy overlays. They're increasing trash pickup. So there is a lot of funding that'll be generating revenue from those increase or bringing those projects back. Couple things, obviously the labor and benefits, we all know that, we had some added costs with those. The capital equipment, no secret there. The same, across every department, costs have gone up. The equipment seems to maybe have stabilized a little bit. Fuel prices obviously are fluctuating. Obviously, the more work we do, the more fuel we consume. We have some, we'll be proposing some capital projects. We'll have some more, projects there. If those get approved, just that much more fuel we're going to be consuming when we do this. We do travel a lot. Our chip sealing, this year we've extended down as far as Ozaukee County, and then all the way up to Door County. So pretty much the whole northeast region, we provide that chip sealing. So a lot of traveling for that machine and our crews. Once again, added fuel costs. We've seen equipment rental too. The lack of equipment being out there. A lot of it seems to be coming back and for sale. Just not a lot of rental. Rental fees are extremely expensive. So piece of equipment that we can't justify to own. We just will rent those, lease those. So we've seen some increase with those. Some of the biggest increases we've seen are parts for our equipment. Supply chain is devastated us with trying to get parts. It's one of those that we continually fight with to get parts. It is, sometimes it seems like it gets a little bit better, then finally we fall right back into that same supply chain. We hear that same thing out there. Obviously energy, our heating and electric for our buildings, slight increases there. Refuge collection, we're doing more trash pickup for the state, so we're going to be seeing some more increase with that. Same with, and then back to the repairs on main streets. I mean, I mentioned about getting a lot of this work back from the state. A lot of it was supply chain issues. They couldn't get materials, or vendors couldn't provide those services. Materials, they're starting to get back again. We are starting to get those services offered back to us, so that has been, again, this year we did some epoxy overlay. Next year we're going to have some more of that, so we are picking up a lot more work. The towns have been fantastic to work with. We've provided a lot of maintenance with the towns. Obviously, we're enterprise fund. More work we do out for our customers, that's where we generate our revenue. Somebody woke up this morning with the snow. Obviously, that as much as I don't like to see it, but we do get some trucks out and, generating some revenue with that. So like anything, the more snow, the more we're out working, generating that revenue. If it doesn't, then we're looking at those other options, cutting brush and things like that. So those were kind of the highlights of budget. Any questions?
Supervisor Bender.
Thanks for doing a good job out there, Bob, and taking care of the roads for us. I know that chip spreader is like a 2002, and I think it needs to be updated. Their life expectancy is 20 years. You're going to be pushing 23 years next year. I know that there's money in that Spirit Fund, and I know that's about probably a $400,000 or $500,000 piece of equipment, but it does work for like 8 other counties plus our county. And I know when I worked on it, I always felt bad when our equipment broke down because we were costing them money. They'd have 10 trucks sitting there with stone, the oil company would be there, and it was our fault. I never minded when the oil company broke down because it was basically on them. So, I would think in the near future, you need to look at replacing that chip spreader. It can't last forever.
Sure.
And then at UW Oshkosh Fox Cities, this year we, hired out the seal coating, and it worked out really good. They did the crack filling, the seal coating, and the striping on the weekend. And if you get up there, you look at all that was about $24,000. And I know we don't have the equipment to do the seal coating. And like the crack filling and the striping, it's best to do a parking lot on the weekend. Maybe you would like to think about maybe bidding that out because it's weekend work and you have more work than you have manpower to do now. And then we could get more of a maintenance program on our parking lots, like the Coughlin Center, you can't even see the lines, and this parking lot's bad. But how do you stripe them? You work Monday through Thursday, basically 11 or 12-hour days. They're here till Friday, so you're not gonna bring somebody in for time and a half to stripe these lots. So maybe we have to look at basically subcontracting that out to a private, where they can do it on the weekend. Thanks again.
Just to comment on that, we have contracted out. The Sheriff's Department was one of the last lots. Yeah, and we did contract that out. In the past, yeah, we're not in that business. So for us to go out there and get the equipment to come in there, yeah, so that's one of them we have been contracting out, and it's worked well for us.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask about contractual services on page 282. So in 2023, we budgeted for $1,559,000 of contractual services. Our budget book projects that we're going to spend $416,000 on projected services, or on contractual services. Could you talk about the $1.1 million of contractual services we budgeted for that won't get completed?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, our contracted services, you know, when we look at, you know, we contract out with Northeast Asphalt, a lot of those contractors that, you know, pulverizing milling machines, like that, the seal coating. One thing, too, is a lot of our design work is contracted out. We have a couple major projects coming up in 2025. That's had some substantial design work in that. So we do have, you know, depending on what projects are coming up, that's kind of how we're the contracted service. I hope I answered that.
I think that adds some context. I'm curious though. Like, let's just look at other object code 5504, the second one, other repair, maintenance streets or something. And there's almost $500,000 that we budgeted for that it looks like we're not projected to spend.
Right.
What accounts for that?
So when we look at like this year, we had a County Road II. So roughly just under 10 miles, and that was all milled. County Road F, just over 4 miles. County Road JJ, just under 3. Those would be all projects that we had to have contracted out with that milling machine. So next year, depending on what we have proposed, we might not have as many miles of road to mill. We may be looking at a pulverize and pave. It all kind of depends on our budget for this coming year.
Okay.
So last year was very heavy on the milling part of it, our projects.
And is milling 5504?
So are you looking at other
repair
main streets?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is where I talked about the epoxy overlays.
Okay.
For the state. During COVID, we didn't do any of that work. Pretty much was all gone. This last year was the first year back with this, and then we're projected again this following year with that. So those are those projects that we'll contract out to with a vendor for that. We use our staff, but their equipment.
Okay.
So
the $480,000 that was budgeted, not spent this year, is there work associated with that didn't get done, or did it just get done cheaper?
It basically get done cheaper.
Awesome. Is that the same for what was the other for professional services 55014? We had budgeted $689,000 and are projected to spend $8,200.
So those are another ones that are those projects that for 2025 were heavily in design for that professional service for design. Those are coming to an end. Those are closing out. So we won't have that design budgeted for that this coming year.
I'm more concerned about what we're spending currently in 2023. We had budgeted almost $700,000 for that and barely spent pocket change on it.
Well, we still have, there's still, I mean, the year's not over. We still have bills that will come in.
So the projected number here is wrong. We're not
Well-
actually projected to spend $8,200 on professional services.
Well, I guess.
I mean, I'm stuck in a conundrum because it looks like there's $1.2 million that we're over budgeting in contractual services that's just getting dumped into the highway fund. 'Cause I'm not saying there's anything wrong, done wrong. I'm just looking for an explanation as to, if we thought a year ago, if you came to us and said, hey, I got a $700,000 worth of stuff to do, and we didn't really have that, I guess I'm wondering where the disconnect is.
That, I guess I can't answer that right
Okay.
now.
Let me, and I'm sorry if I missed the full question. I stepped out to see if I could figure out the clock, which is obviously stopped. Building maintenance is aware of it. But I think it's important for the board to understand the relationship between the highway fund budget and the county road maintenance budget. So if you look at the county highway budget, which is the main one we talk about, there is no tax levy directly going into that budget. The highway department acts like, it's an enterprise fund. So it acts like it was a business. And as a business, it has really three sets of customers. I mean, we control it, we run it, there are employees, but it has three sets of customers. One is the state, one is towns, and to some extent other municipalities, and one is the county. So the highway budget itself is self-contained. No county money goes into it to fund whatever the deficit is. It does have a fund balance. The taxpayer money that goes into it two ways. One is the county maintenance budget. The county maintenance budget is for work done on county highways, and that is paid to the highway department, essentially paying ourselves, and that's mainly tax levy. The other way is the capital improvements program. Of course, much of the work done on county highways is capital improvements, so that's taxpayer money that goes into it. The point being, and if I understand your concern, and again, I apologize if I didn't hear all of it, is that whatever amount is budgeted here doesn't mean we're over budgeting and putting too much taxpayer money in. If it's just not spent, it's just not spent because it's self-contained within the highway department budget as opposed to the county maintenance. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
I think I understand. I think I'm still concerned about what were we planning to do with all that contractual service money that we didn't end up doing? So I understand that there may be corresponding revenues that didn't come in, and therefore we don't have the corresponding expenditure, and so maybe we're not dumping extra money into the highway fund. But there was still 1.4 roughly, or $1.1 million of contractual services that we thought we were going to spend last year, or this year, in 2023 budget, that, at least according to my budget book, we're not projected to spend. And now we're coming back for next budget, 2024, asking for roughly that same $1.6 million for contractual services. And I understand there may not be a net out on it, but if we're coming here saying this is the work that needs to be done, this is the amount of money it's going to cost, I just want to know where the ends didn't meet on this in 2023. Is it possible that we could just get a list of the things that in the 2023 budget comprised the other repair maintenance streets and professional services, both on the budgeted and actualized side, as well as what was budgeted for 2024?
Sure. So you're looking at 55004?
Yes, and 55014. And Mr. Chairman, if we could get that, is it possible that we could have another chance for Mr. Damel to address the board?
Sure, if you can come back tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob, I got a question for you. I was asked by a constituent. I'll give you a much easier question back there. Is Winnebago County reimbursed for the trash, debris, and the tall grass on the 441 bridge?
Yes, so we're under contract with them
Okay,
to
so
provide
that-
those services.
Thank you. So that is our responsibility to take care of that? Because the question was, why are we letting that go so long? There's a lot of trash on the bridge. There's a lot of grasses growing on this concrete bridge.
Sure. So, I mean, so we have parameters that we have to follow. So typically, we only get anything between the white and the yellow lines. Otherwise, if it's a hazard. So depending on what it is, we just can't go out there and just pick up 24/7. Depends on what's out there. I'm not sure about is that like on the bridge you're talking?
Yes, it's actually
So in the
growing.
drains?
Grass is growing. It's probably, about that high.
Is it by the drains on the parapet walls or?
It's by the walls.
Yeah, so those are the scoppers that where the water goes, the drains. So what happens is that so much grime gets in there. I mean, you see corn grow out of them. It just depends on when we can get out there. We can't do a lot of this work anymore during the day. A lot of it's night work. So it just depends when we can get out there. And that we can talk to the state with if there's, areas like that.
Okay. So we are reimbursed from the state on this?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The mold in the Highway Department building, are we addressing that, or is that still an ongoing concern? Where are we at with that?
So the design work is finished, and I believe that is going out to bid as we speak.
And as far as the employees, that everybody's been safe, nobody's been complaining about that, it's been mitigated at this time?
We're holding our own, yes. I mean, we have air purifiers, we have dehumidifiers going, we have air scrubber. So we've taken everything we could to get that level at I don't think at any level's acceptable. It's just too bad it went on this long.
Sure.
But I'm glad that we're reaching that point where we can get this mitigated.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor Bender.
I think if you check the capital improvement book, that 680-some thousand, that was to actually redo the offices. We just never did it. We spent like $8,200, but I believe that money is for the office repair. So if you check the capital improvement for 2023, I believe that's what the money's for.
Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dama, I'll try to give you an easy one as we get ready to hang it up, hopefully today. I would assume, or let me know, are you kind of ahead on most of your projects? We had such a wonderful summer, it didn't rain for 3 months. I'm hoping that helped your highway department a lot.
Loaded question there. As far as our projects that we did, yes, we did. Some of our capital projects, yeah, we ran into some issues. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, some of our County Road T project in Pioneer. We had issues with the contractor. They didn't finish it in '22. I came back for more money to finish that project. The contractor was set to come in. I had meetings with them. They were set dates. We're going to get you the schedule, and received a phone call that they're liquidating their equipment. I don't know if they're not in business anymore, but they promised they were going to take care of it. So yeah, no, it was not a good year for that part of it. So this next year, obviously, that's going to be our number one priority, is to finish that project up. Whether, this is discussions for Mary Ann as we get into this, our next steps with this. Obviously, I don't want to go rebid what's left out there. Potentially, our department will go out there and finish what's left of that project, and we'll just move on from the contractor. So, but yeah, we did have a very good year for work, and we got a lot accomplished this year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mike, I just wanted to ask you, is that where that extra money is showing up, where Supervisor Bender just said? Is that where that extra money is showing up? I think that's what Supervisor Schellinger was asking also.
That should be the money that was included in the capital improvement project should not be what was budgeted in those accounts Supervisor Skellinger was
Okay.
asking. So we'll have to look into that and get back to you tomorrow morning.
Okay. So whenever you get here tomorrow, we'll be done early, so.
Sounds good.
All right, solid waste. We'll have them next, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. It's a little after 4, Doug, but.
All right. Good afternoon. I'll try to make this quick. I'm John Raby, the Solid Waste Director. My section of the budget is way in the back in appendix. It starts on page 469. Oversight for our department is provided by the county executive and our 9-member Solid Waste Management Board. We operate as a quasi-independent enterprise fund with all operations offset by user tipping fees, and there's no direct impact to the tax levy. We continue to be in a partnership with Brown and Outagamie counties for solid waste and recycling services. That started in 2003. Currently, our solid waste agreement is in place to provide disposal capacity for our users through 2042. The solid waste department does not run a landfill anymore. We have closed landfill sites that we maintain. We have a drop-off facility for residential users, and our commercial users use our transfer station where we load the materials into semis and ship to either Brown or Outagamie County landfills, or recycling goes to the Outagamie County Tri-County facility. I guess some of the key budget highlights, we do have a few changes to our table of organization. We are looking to elevate 2 solid waste associates to solid waste specialists, and then add a new solid waste associate that's more of a function of grounds, kind of helping out in various areas, including scale operation as well. And then we're looking to eliminate the environmental manager from the 2024 table of organization. Other than the labor expenses that have increased, some of the other changes that we've made, every year we look at our tonnages, we look at our tri-county group with Brown and Outagamie, look at our what our operational plans are, and then try to build our tipping fees around creating somewhat of a balanced budget. So we're looking to increase tipping fees for solid waste. Again, we're creating a new category this year, which parallels with what Outagamie County is doing, where we're creating an out-of-county rate. So when I say out-of-county, I mean out of the 3 counties, Brown, Outagamie, and Winnebago. So if we get waste from Fond du Lac or Green Lake County, it's going to be charged at a higher rate now than the 3-county region. So that is being increased from $52 to $58 a ton. Our what we call our gate rate, so just general customer within the Tri-County region, that is increasing by $4 a ton to $56 a ton, and both those tonnages match what Outagamie County solid waste is going toward in 2024. And then our municipalities that are partners in this arrangement, they receive a little bit more of a discount, so their municipal rate is going to be $53 a ton, so a $4 increase there. And then from a recycling standpoint, we look at commodity markets, mainly commodity market driven, but based on our best guesses for 2024, we're going to leave the recycling rate for our municipalities at $5 a ton. Yeah, I guess when you all boil it down and back out some of the capital assets and some of our other liabilities for long-term care of our landfills, our budget ends up with a $541,511 deficit for 2024. And to cover that, we have our retained earnings account that we've put money away over the years to kind of soften these transition times. And so we'll pull funds from that to cover our budget amount. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, I'd just like you to point out, in case it was overlooked by any chance, item 55049, our hauling costs, at $1,100,000. When you bring garbage to the landfill, it just doesn't automatically get up to Brown or Outagamie County. That's a significant amount and gets worse when the load limits are on.
That's correct. Yeah, those rates will change. We have budgeted approximately 75% of our waste in 2024 will go to Brown County's landfill, and about 25% of the waste will go to Outagamie County's landfill. So we have different rates to go to each site because of the distance and whatnot. There's also recycling hauling included in that number, but it's not a inexpensive venture to get into, hauling solid waste and recyclables. So.
And also, if you could just touch on item 54702 on page 479. The solid waste is in the middle of a marsh that goes to the creek, and a significant amount of our budget goes towards stormwater.
Right. Yeah, we have the same sort of stormwater issue that airport director was talking about. Much less of a magnitude. We're probably in the $50,000 to $70,000 a year in stormwater fees between our sites. We've attempted over the years to work with the city to try to apply for credits to reduce those numbers, but I guess have been less than successful in those endeavors. But the majority of that line item is charges for the leachate disposal from the landfills. That's where the majority of that 300,000+ comes from. So.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you. Your eliminated position has been vacant for 23 months. Can you tell me a little bit about what responsibilities that position was supposed to do, what's happened in the 23 months that it's been vacant, and what will happen subsequently?
Certainly. Since it's been vacant, I've taken over the responsibilities of that position, duties. The position was created back in the 2018 budget to provide direct oversight to the landfill gas to energy operations, to maximize the efficiency of that operation and maximize the revenues. It was also, the other half of it was management of the long-term care and maintenance activities at both the closed Snell Road and Sunnyview landfills. The part of the reason why it's been vacant for a period of time is the uncertainty with our gas to energy program. Our contract with WPS, which was a nice contract that we had in place for 15 years, was expiring at the end of 2022. And so there was some uncertainty of whether we'd continue gas to energy or just turn to flaring the gas that's being generated. So it's been a bit of a holding pattern, so to speak. We have yet to really fully commit for a long period of time, but we're working through some opportunities that would allow us to increase revenues over what we're getting under our current year-to-year power purchase agreement with WPS. So I guess the ultimate goal, even though it's coming out of the 2024 budget, is once we have a plan in place for long-term gas energy, we'll be coming back to personnel and finance and county board to potentially add that position back in.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's always concerning when positions are eliminated and the answer is, the director's just going to take on more responsibilities. I know everybody works really hard, and that's also something that facilitates burnout and takes you away from the other direct responsibilities that you would normally have. So appreciate what you've done. Looking forward to the resolution there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bender.
Landfill, what's the purpose of that? I know a couple of years ago they were talking about making a park behind there. I don't think we need any more parks. We can't take care of what we have. So, hopefully you got an intention of making it some type of nature setting where there's actually no maintenance, because we don't seem to be good at doing maintenance.
Right. Yeah, we did do a little study of the pond area behind the offices at County Road Y at the Sunnyview landfill. There's a nice area back there, but based on some of the other issues that were occurring in the county at the time, we just decided to table that evaluation, and I guess we'll pick it up at another time if there's interest. So, but thank you.
Okay, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, tomorrow morning, 8:30 we'll be starting again. There will be coffee and rolls and that in the back. So if you want to get here early, that would be good. The girls are usually here about 7:30. So at this time, we will be recessing till tomorrow morning at 8:30.